Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Mike in the Asylum with your hosts, Sydney Cisneros,
Jesse Neto,
Liam Grant,
and Ron Van Buskirk. Sorry, my voice is going out because I'm battling a head cold.
Well, join us this evening as we talk about some of our favorite horror movies. Tonight, we will be talking about the Norwegian movie Trollhunter. Came out in 2010, was directed by Andre Orvedal. Yeah, I did it. I guess I said it
close
right.
enough.
Starring a bunch of people who, to be completely honest, I'm personally not going to try to say their names. Although I'd hate to not give them credit for it.
Well, I think we're going to default to the guy, the girl, and the cameraman.
The other guy.
Yeah. And Hans. I mean, we know Hans.
Hans is the main character.
Best. Hans really is. Anyway, this was a fantastic movie, I thought. I lost my train of thought there, but it's not normally. It's not like the other movies we've covered so far. It probably fits a little more in the action adventure. It does feel like an old timey.
I call it a monster.
Yeah, it kind of feels like an old monster movie.
That's kind of what I was talking about.
Found footage movie. I guess I'll go and start with spoilers ahead for Trollhunter. By the way,
Definitely.
As we give our general
opinions for it. I liked it. It's honestly a movie that I really do enjoy. It's got a 7 out of 10 on a few different rating services. But I will say this is the one found footage movie I'll actually watch again and again. I'm not a big fan of that particular subgenre of movie. But I guess I'll pass it off to Jesse.
I love this movie a lot. I've probably watched it like 8 times. It's something I've just thrown on in the background, which is weird because it's foreign.
Well,
so I can't even understand it, but I use it as like background watching.
One thing so far that doing this has made me realize is I'll be like, oh man, I'm with Jeff's movie no one's seen. Jesse's like, oh, I've seen it 10 times already.
Don't worry, we're going to hit ones that none of us have ever heard
Yes.
of. It's going to be great. But, so yes, and also in terms of found footage movies, I definitely hold this as one of the higher ones, personally speaking.
Okay. Oh, it's my turn.
Yes.
It is.
Hello, this is Liam.
That's why I stay with you.
So, this I will agree with both Jesse and Sydney that this is the best found footage
I wouldn't say best.
movie.
It's my favorite.
I was gonna say I like it a
It's
lot.
the better ones out of that little subgenre. But then again, like I do have some problems with this movie. But overall, I leave it saying, oh hey, I had fun with that.
Bring on your problems. Let's fight.
Right now, let's have Ron say something first.
Yeah. Okay. With this movie, I have watched it twice now, and it's one of those movies that I always say at least watch twice because you'll see things that you didn't see the first time through. But with that being said, the movie was pretty good. Not my favorite of the found footage stuff. I would always say Grave Encounters beats everything.
I like this more than Grave Encounters. I do like Grave Encounters.
Okay, but this movie, and a lot of it was, the first time I watched it, I was struggling because I'm like, this isn't really a horror movie. But then I made my peace with it that it's a monster film, like, the classic kind of monster movies. It's like, it's not scary, but it is, a monster kind of movie. But overall, I dig this movie. It's probably something I'd rewatch in the future.
Yay.
And now I'm going to hand it over to Sid, and he's going to kind of give the plot of it.
All right, so this is probably going to be a little choppy because we did miss a week between recordings and this. So I'm going to go through this my best. Just be prepared for us to maybe miss some stuff and for a few interruptions here and there. But our movie starts off introducing us to our three, technically main characters. A bunch of film students from a local university in Norway. I just say local, it's the whole country, but whatever. They're a bunch of film students, and they're filming a documentary on bear poachers. Because
a lot of bears are showing up dead.
And
reasons.
One thing that's worth mentioning is, from what little research I've done on this movie, hunting is a big deal in Norway, but it is an extremely strict, regulated country when it comes to firearms.
They take pride in it. The hunters take pride in it.
I would like to talk about that later because I do feel like this movie's probably like a huge satire of things we don't understand. Like they're kicking the shit out of like Norwegian politics or something, and we just don't know.
Yeah, honestly, this could be a much more proper movie than we think. But anyway, I digress. For the first 15 minutes of the movie, that's really all it is. They walk around, they interview a few hunters, they mention stuff like, well, yeah, there's only 12 bear hunters in this whole country. We all know each other.
And that guy.
And
that
guy's
not one of us.
And that's our first intro to one of the other upcoming characters. They
Awesome beard, sunglasses, hat at all times.
my personal hero.
He was the head of the Norwegian Wildlife Board.
Yes.
Oh, that's a different
that's
guy.
his.
That's a
oh,
different
not-
guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, this is
No, F that guy.
one of the few other characters we meet. This is our first introduction to the head of the Norwegian Wildlife Board.
His name
Okay.
is Finn.
His name is Finn. He's one of like
Okay.
the two characters I know the names
They
of.
are. You got a name.
They say it sometimes. It's the only reason I know.
Anyway, he's talking about like a horrible, tragic thing. These bears keep turning up dead. It's a huge disgrace. But anyway, our filmmakers, they get a lead on someone to follow, someone to talk to.
That glasses guy I mentioned.
They start following him, and it's just like basically a montage of, hey, there he is. Oh, there he's going. Oh, we got to follow him. It doesn't really mean much. It's just 15 minutes of what feels like filler.
We chased him onto a boat and annoyed him, and he was all like, politely told him to fuck off.
Yes,
It's a fairy.
What did I
a
say?
fairy.
It's a fairy. You
No,
said boat.
this isn't a fairy tale.
No, it's not a fairy tale.
It's
movie,
not a
right?
fairy tale.
It's not a
movie,
fairy tale
Ron.
movie.
It's not fairy.
How about you go fuck yourself?
Anyway, and I don't want to say it feels like filler. I do really like it because it's kind of a build up you don't really see in movies like this. It feels really realistic for a found footage movie in particular. But anyway,
They have to work for it. They can't just be like,
Hey, it's
only
that
followed
guy.
him and holy crap.
anyway, they catch up with him and they talk to him a couple times here and there, and he's like, "Hey, man, leave me alone. I don't want to be part of this." He's never downright aggressive. He's not like how you would normally think a poacher
He doesn't
is.
like grab at the camera like they always do in these movies.
Yeah, and then like when you think of like a wildlife poacher, you think of someone who's like, "I'll shoot you, I'll kill you," or whatever. But he's actually fairly polite for apparently someone who's doing horrible criminal stuff, which is your first kind of clue, I guess.
Another clue is that, like, in some of the bear sightings, it's like the wrong type of bear for this area, or the bear prints are like backwards.
Strange, out of place.
We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that
I
later.
think one of that happens like around this.
Yeah,
point.
one of the hunters who's apparently from the looks of it had a little too much to drink says something like, "Oh, the bear tracks are really weird, don't you think? They're backwards."
And then the guy just doesn't answer. And he
The guy
drives
just
away.
goes no comment basically.
No comment.
And anyway, they're sitting there and like cut to more footage of them just sitting around waiting for something to happen.
They follow him to a trailer park.
Yeah, they follow him to a trailer park. They rent out one of the cabins on the trailer park, and
They sneak an audio listening device into his trailer to try to catch what's going on and
And
stake out.
and that's when you notice things are kind of odd. Like I think
he's got
that's-
big ass gashes on the
Gashes.
side of his truck.
Yeah,
It's like
the
it-
light.
it-
there's lights like
Big
UV lights.
UV lights hanging
just
up on the
shining
outside.
his trailer.
And like people complain about the smell.
Horrible
the smell.
Yeah.
You know.
Anyway, they all just think it's basic weird poacher stuff. They don't know what's going on at all. So, and he drives off into the woods, and they rush and follow him out there. They park their shitty car. It's one of my favorite things. You see the main characters driving a shitty car, especially in a low budget movie. You're like, oh, that car's gonna get destroyed. But anyway, they follow him into the woods, and they're just wandering around trying to find him. And all of a sudden, they see these bright flashing blue lights out in the distance. Lots of weird noises, lots of rumbling.
And then Hans comes running down the hill in like a poncho, and he just looks
He
at them.
hold on. He says the one
No,
word
yeah, yeah.
in
The
this
one
series
word.
That's what I was gonna say.
that's not subtitled. He looks dead in the camera and goes, "Troll!"
and then just runs away. And they're all like, "What the fuck just
What the
happened?"
fuck just happened? Well, the noise gets louder, and they look up and they see this massive giant.
That's actually
humanoid.
later.
Is that later?
No, that's
Or
later.
do they just keep running?
They don't find the troll this first time.
Yeah, they're running
that's
with
right.
him because they're
Because they're freaked.
He's running from
they're
something.
freaked out. Yeah.
Because remember, they get back to his car and,
And they're like,
"Do you
"Oh,
really
you're,
believe
you're
in trolls?"
bullshitting." Yeah, okay, all right. Well, I fucked that up. Jesus Christ. But they freak out and they run away, and they run back to their car, and the thing's just
It's
fucked up.
turned on its side.
It's turned on its side. The
are
tires are
gone,
it's
there's saliva
covered in
dripping
slime.
over.
Everything's beat in, and they have no idea what's going on. So they eventually run back into Hans,
And he says, "You can get in if you want."
yeah, and they end up driving back to the campsite. And the whole time they're grilling him, like, did you yell troll? Like, what's going on? What are you talking about? Oh, yes, this movie is in Norwegian, so a lot of what we say is going to be paraphrasing and trying to remember subtitles. So I suppose I should mention that, too. But anyway, they're driving back, and, they're trying to, like, grill him. Did you say troll? What's going on? What was that thing in there? And he's quiet the whole time, basically. Just shuts up, not saying a single thing.
Eventually, he basically breaks down and says, "Like, if you want footage, then you're welcome to follow me as I go out tomorrow night." And
Doesn't give much explanation as to why quite yet, but he basically offers him.
He knows this is a show don't tell sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like nothing he says is gonna. As far as they're concerned, he's just now a crazy bear poacher.
Yes. So of course they're still like trash talking him, like, "Oh, this guy's just insane. I mean, he lives in a trailer. Do you see how bad that thing was? Yada yada yada."
Well, right before they jump into his car to go on this adventure, he asks if any of them believe in God.
That's the next day.
That's the
Oh,
next
is that
day.
the next day?
Yeah,
oh,
that's
okay. I
later.
thought we were on that.
Because it's like, okay, we're all getting together, ready to go
okay.
troll hunting. By the way, are any of you Christian? And they're all like, lol, no.
Well, no, and he looks them all over, and he's like, "Are you Christian? Are you sure?" And the guy, the host, the guy with the microphone, says like, "Well, I used to sing choir in school, but I hated it." And,
That comes later, but we'll get to
Damn it!
I just watched it this morning.
Yeah, I
Dang
keep
it.
forgetting. It's like, oh man, I'm like a week behind for sure.
It's okay.
And I have to give the explanation because I'm going to suggest the movie. These stupid rules. Anyway, this is more fun.
Yes, it is.
It's more fun when we try to recollect
Recollect it.
ourselves.
I'll,
blah,
I'll-
blah, blah,
I'll
blah.
try to guide when things go off the rails.
Guide our hips,
They,
Jesse.
they get into the car. They all like drive off to the woods again, and this is when he says like, "Okay, wait here." And he goes off into the woods, and they're all just sitting there like, "Lol, trolls." That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. And then they wait there for a good long time. I would say like 2 minutes of screen time, or them just digging around and
It
like
feels like it's like hours.
yeah, joshing and then doing nothing, and then they're like hear a weird sound, like almost a roar going on in the background, and then trees are starting to shake, and then
they
again
see
they
the
see
flashes
blue
again.
flashing lights, and they're like, okay, what the fuck is going on? And they all kind of have a Jurassic Park moment where they look down at like some grass
The
or
grass is
shrubbery, and it's like
shaking.
dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun.
Really effective. Like I know that's obviously just ripped from Jurassic Park, but it's super effective.
Well, I mean, how else can you do that?
Yeah, I was thinking it's just something big.
Is on its way.
Anyway, so this is the first time they see one, right?
Yep.
He comes running in. He's like, "All right, everyone, get the fuck out! Run, 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 run!" And
And of course they don't.
They don't believe him right away. He's like, "Oh, he's doing this thing again." And then lo and behold, they turn around, and then you see the giant three-headed monstrosity. Starts.
Like a good 20, 25 feet tall.
Yeah, oh god, this thing's massive.
You know
Like,
what
it was really
you
cool.
know what you guys like really skipped over.
What?
Uh-oh.
Right before they all went out, he told them to go wash their groins
Fuck! You're
and
right.
their armpits.
He tells
and
him,
put on some
okay,
of the,
so yeah, he tells him to go down to the river, strip down completely naked, wash off all of your stinky parts,
Yep.
and then rub this thing all over you and your clothes.
It looks like
Look
a
at
giant
earwax.
hairy booger.
yeah,
I'd say earwax.
it's pretty bad.
or something.
And of course, they mention how it smells horrible. He tells them that it's troll stench.
He says it's like, do it or I'm not taking you with me, and they're like, fine.
Fine. And then, of course, because this is so out of order, this is before they go in the woods. They still think he's a crazy old man. We're on a roll
Back to
tonight.
the troll.
Back to the troll. Anyway,
Next time I'm gonna
very,
make the notes.
very anticlimactic thing there. Anyway, back to the troll. Everyone's running away. Everyone scatters, and then you're left with just the cameraman.
He finds out that he has night vision.
Yeah.
Like it literally says, it's like, holy crap, it has night vision.
So yeah, these are obviously film students. They have no idea what's really going on.
Oh, thanks, Sydney.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Am I wrong, Jesse?
No, you're totally right.
But anyway, that leads to a really great scene because obviously it's just the cameraman. There's no dialogue. You just hear him breathing, saying, "Oh my god," every once in a while.
Then he turns around and you think it's a tree trunk, but no, that's its leg.
Yeah, and that's
I
actually one of my
really like
favorite
that.
reveals ever. It looks like a tree trunk, and then a hand just comes down and scratches its ass. It's my favorite. It's one of my
Tail
favorite
swings
reveals.
by.
I love. Well, that's actually one of my things I love about this movie. You see the troll. He's got the big bulbous nose. He's all lanky and weird looking. They almost look like Muppets. Like they
Their
purposely.
heads are sniffing around.
Yeah, and they purposely kind of kept like the storybook look to it. They didn't try to make them look cool and modern and edgy. I really
Oh,
like
thank
it.
God.
I really like it. They look goofy and weird looking.
But still, like, they're going to eat you.
But yeah,
so you know
they're
what?
still big. They're still fucking big.
I'd still run away.
Anyway, they
They all get back to Hans's car as he guides
Yeah.
them.
yeah. He doesn't. Oh yeah, they get back to Hans's car, and then you get a really good shot of like the troll walks out of the woods, and he's like, "All right, get behind the car." And Hans just stands in front. He's like trying to lure the troll. Come here, come here,
Sings a
come
little
here.
song.
Yeah, he sings a little
singing-
song,
Yeah.
which I assume is a Bible hymn,
Something.
something like that. Anyway, the troll steps closer to him, and he presses a button, and just massive spotlights on the back of his car just
Like UV lights. Just,
UV light just ignites, and the troll just turns to stone right there in front of him. Oh shit, we forgot another really important part. The first time they're falling into the woods before they realize what's going on, they see a sign on the fence that says "Beware blasting zone."
Motherfucker.
And then right before they go into the second time, he says, "Here, put this on the fence," and it's just the same sign that
Right.
says "Beware blasting zone."
So you know he's the one that put it there.
Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you, audience, for bearing with us.
Oh, God. This is still a
Yeah.
work in progress. 5
Yes.
episodes in. It's still a work in progress.
Since we go scene by scene, Ron's probably right that we should have like scene heading 1, scene heading 2.
And I normally do that, but this week for some reason I kind of was just say I'm gonna watch the movie and not take the notes.
We got lazy.
and then I got lazy. Yeah,
We got
So-
lazy.
Yeah, that was the exact same thing. that happened
But this
to
is
me.
fun because we get to like go, oh my god, that, oh my god.
And then I say, someone could say, fuck you, Sydney, you're wrong. But anyway, and so the troll turns to stone, and that leads to like all the characters freaking out. Like,
They're
"Oh,
all laughing and giggling, and they're like, holy shit, it's all real.
it's a real troll.
And then Hans kind of buzzkills things by saying, it's like, what the fuck didn't you tell me one of you were a Christian? And they're like, I don't know. And that's when they have the conversation.
Yeah, and then he's like, so it's like, oh, none of us are Christian. And of course, he's kind of looks suspicious, and he asks them like one by one.
To the lead guy, who's the sort of, I guess I should go into, he's the face of the video that
yeah,
they're
he's
making.
the guy with the camera.
The announcer,
Yeah,
and
the-
he like talks and is clearly the one
Well,
leading the other two around.
There's the sound woman, and then there's the cameraman.
right.
I just remembered there is one scene you did forget.
Damn
We
it.
keep doing.
The blue coat guy, main guy, Thomas. He got scratched.
He sure did. He got bit.
Shit, that's the
He
most
got bit.
important part.
because I knew this was gonna take effect later on.
That
Sorry,
happens-
guys.
that
But,
happens
like-
before this troll. That happens like the first time they meet Hans
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
first
forest.
time troll.
And he thinks a bear bit him. God damn it.
See, I should have kept all the notes.
Which,
man, sorry.
first off, how like this troll is like really big. It's like I'm pretty sure you wouldn't get that mixed up with a bear.
I don't know.
It's
I don't
like
know.
the same troll.
I don't know if you've ever been in the woods at night, but it's pretty fucking dark.
It really is.
Um,
But yeah, they duct tape his like shoulder all
like
up.
disinfected first aid. You know, it's not even that bad of a bite, really. It's
Right.
just more inconvenient than anything else.
Well, I mean, he's like nursing it the whole time. He's like,
Yeah,
always
but
shaking
it's
and
not
moving.
like a life-threatening hospital thing.
Right.
It's something your dad could take care of.
Yeah. So that happens.
Yes.
Back
Fuck.
back to the whole Christian thing. You said that the main dude, he's all like, "Oh, I used to be in choir."
Oh yeah,
but that's it."
I used to sing in a church choir, but I don't
It
actually
was
believe
more
in it.
forced, like he was forced to go to church.
Yeah, yeah.
Hans looks to the sound woman and is like, "Well, I can tell you're not Christian," which I love that line.
That's my favorite thing. She just goes, "What are you talking about?"
Why? And we never know. It's just like Hans has that sense. He can just tell.
And then he looks at the cameraman and he's like, "What about you?" And it's like one of the few times you hear the cameraman saying, "He's like, no, it's not me."
The cameraman is like the cameraman in every found footage movie. You forget he's in person until he'll like do a thing where
Every
he like,
once in
looks
a while
at the
he'll say
camera
something.
and be like, "Hey, what up?"
But anyway, and then this is where the blasting sign comes from. He walks up to the troll, smashes its ankle, the sledgehammer, things falls down, and then he spends all night with the jackhammer crumbling it up into stones.
Because we can't just have a giant troll
Troll-shaped
statue.
rock standing in the middle of the
People
woods.
would be confused.
So he chops it all up with the chainsaw, and then he does actually blow it up with
Blow it up,
dynamite.
yeah. And
Pretty
so,
intense.
and then he made the joke about who needs some gravel.
He needs some gravel. That's actually
Hans has a weird sense of humor
he
throughout
does.
this whole movie.
Hans
where
is
he's
my
just like-
favorite. I love Hans. I want more movies
And
to have
then-
Hans in it.
And then
Just for the audience.
it's, of course, the next day, and we see a car coming,
And it's
Finn.
Finn.
It's Finn.
And he's all like,
You guys forgot another important scene too.
Oh God.
Yeah,
piece
even
of shit.
you did, Ron. like Hans gave the reason why he decided to let the kids film him.
No, that's
No,
that's
That's
after.
what's happening right now.
Yeah.
No, you guys started talking about the morning.
No, he
after.
started talking about the morning.
Oh, so I jumped
It's
the
Ron's
gun
fault.
because of Ron.
Oh.
Because he gives the answer that this is a shitty job. And
It's
he wants
it's my favorite reasoning because like this isn't the first movie to have the monster hunter or like the secret guy who's like because usually the answer is stuff like the world deserves to know or I gotta protect people, they have to know. His reasoning is just this is a shit job. I don't get overtime. I don't get night pay. I don't get holidays. I'm just tired.
I have to fight giant man-eating monsters.
I'm tired. I have to work all night.
He really comes off almost as like a janitor, like so blue collar, where it's just like, man, this fucking thing again.
He would be sitting in the bar next to the landscaper, and they're both complaining about their job. But anyway, and
So the next day,
so the next day,
Finn rolls up and he's shooting the evil eye at the kids, and he's like, "What the
hell
are they
got a
doing here?"
camera for? And,
He's
you know,
like,
Hans just kind of brushes it under the rug.
And he's like, "If you think you're gonna keep that footage, you're wrong." And then another van shows up, and what is it? It's like
It's a
painting.
painter.
It's okay. So this film's filmed in Norway. A bunch of Poles show up in a painting van. So you just get these. They're my favorite. They're probably
I
my
wrote down
favorite.
what they said.
They're my favorite characters in the whole movie. They come in, they open up the back of their painter's van, and there's just a dead bear. And then this is where you get the reasoning for all the bears showing up. They're using them as a cover-up for all the dying livestock.
Finn puts
and
on
stuff.
little bear paws on his hands and
feet
like little
and-
pole things, so he walks and
around.
fakes the tracks,
Finn
which is kind of amazing.
Yeah, Finn is unintentionally hilarious
Yeah,
in
because
this movie because he gives like he's the lamest looking character, gives the characters dirty eyes, and then you see him just
waddling around.
clumsily mess up his job.
He keeps doing his job.
He does the job poorly.
You can tell he thinks he's so important, but he's like just one step above Hans.
Well, that's why I really like Finn, though, is because he's supposed to be your scary government man in black guy. He's supposed to be the big, intimidating guy who looks at everyone and is like, "Hey, get out of here."
He looks like my science teacher.
But he's the putz. He's the best.
And he blends in with the other hunters, and he's like, "Oh yeah, no, this definitely is the right tracks or the right."
And that's
this isn't even the
He's
first
a slightly shitty little bureaucrat, and I love it.
And that's so realistic because, like Sydney was saying, in these movies, there's always like the shadowy the Men in Black who come in and they're so cool. They got everything.
They got the
books,
glasses.
Nothing slips out. Whereas this is realistic. It's a
He
asshole who doesn't know what he's
He doesn't
doing.
even confront them right away. You can tell by the look on his face. He's like, "Oh man, I gotta tell my boss about this."
Like, sorry for the pause.
Yeah.
I have to gather my thoughts.
Anyway,
Continue on.
Anyway, so they throw the dead bear in the woods and they shoot it, and then
he don't shoot the bear. Well, I think the bear was already shot.
the bear was already dead.
But he shoots the bear
Yeah,
again.
but Hans.
Oh, okay. I
shoots
thought he
the
was
bear.
just leaving shells.
It died of like old age or something.
Yeah.
They actually say he's from a zoo, like a bear that died in a zoo.
And so Finn gets grumpy and drives away, and they start talking to the poles that
They're
came
the
up.
happiest motherfuckers in the world.
And they had the best line. They go up to this guy and ask, "So why are you carrying around bear
Also,
carcasses?"
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you one more time, but this is actually really cool. Like, it's a bunch of people, like, they're speaking different languages, so they do what people in that part of the world actually do, and they both just default to English.
Woo!
Which is my favorite thing ever.
Oh, yeah,
Because
that
he speaks this next line in English. So what I was going to say was that they're talking to the Poles and they're asking them, it's like, well, why don't you want to know why you're carrying around bear carcasses? And he says, in Poland, we no ask, we do. And it was great.
That guy is so good.
He goes into a whole tirade about it, and he's very proud of himself for doing this. It's
He
like,
loves his job.
we do
He's
what we
paid
do.
a shit ton,
And then
all
we-
he has to do is haul a dead bear.
And we also find out during all this time what kind of agency, what's the name of the
The
agency?
TSS.
Yeah,
Oh,
which
the-
is Troll Security
the
Service.
Or what
I
I,
love
like
that
to
so
call
much.
him.
It's such a stupid real name. And then that's
What else would you call it?
I don't know. But and then it's it's where you find out the whole conspiracy, and you find out there's a bunch of red tape around it, and
Well, you also find out that this troll isn't where it was supposed to be. It broke farther into human territory.
yeah,
than
he
they
mentions
normally
that
do.
this is not the kind of troll you'd find in a place like this. This is a big ass mountain troll.
And this also later on in the film we find out how they combat to keep them in certain areas. And,
Keep it in their national park,
which is kind of funny.
And so he wants to find out why the trolls were acting aggressively. So he wants to get a blood sample from
Heck,
one of the trolls.
No. He
No.
doesn't. He doesn't want to get a blood sample. He calls someone on the phone. The person on the phone says, "I
Oh,
want a
yeah,
blood
that's
sample,"
right.
and he goes, "Really?
But you guys also forgot another part.
Fuck."
He has to fill out the documentation.
That's what
for
I was
killing-
about to get to.
Yes.
No, the documentation comes a little bit later because
They go to
he's
a
on the
diner.
he's on the phone with her.
Yeah.
At
And
that
then they hit
scene.
the road and
And
they
then
drive.
they hit the road. So yeah, they
Oh,
end
never
up
mind.
going to a diner.
Yeah, you're right.
And this is the part where I was
We're
rolling my
so
eyes the
bad at
most.
this.
I'm like Phoenix Wright, just yelling
Objection.
objection at everything.
And then you're wrong.
yeah, and then I'm
And
wrong.
then you go to your tugging your neck animation.
Of course, yeah, just like any other person, they would a Secret Service is at a diner filling out troll papers.
You have to tell
What
what
troll
type
was
it
it?
was.
How did you kill
blow
it?
it up?
Did it explode or did it turn to
How
stone?
many
Just like-
heads did it have?
yeah, and
I
he
really-
hates the paperwork.
I really like this scene
I
because
love
he
this scene.
talks. He talks about okay, so there are two kinds of trolls: mountain and forest trolls, and then there are these sub.
It's where you get all the
trolls.
exposition.
Like hearing that makes me want to see more of this movie
I-
about
I-
all the different
I
kinds
want
of
to
trolls,
watch
you know?
a National Geographic documentary
I do
about
too.
trolls.
Yeah, like the
But
sequel
I
to
actually think Ron had
documentary.
something to say about this
Yes, he
scene
did.
in the diner.
Oh,
No,
my
just
bad.
just the fact that I thought it was like, you know, for it to be like very secretive and stuff. I thought like, why would they have a paper trail?
I think we've
Like,
established that
at
these
all.
guys aren't good at their job.
Yeah,
Well,
I know,
it's
but
not just that. It's not
it's-
like they're like the Black Hand, or they're not some secret organization that's been existing
That
outside
controls
for centuries.
everything about Norway's
They're
society.
they're literally just a branch of government, and you know they still have their paperwork and they still have their
No,
bureaucracy,
and I
and I
get
love
that,
that.
and I get that, but I feel like with this movie is like the you would think there was a place for them to fill that out or put that
But like,
log.
I threw
like-
out this that if I was sitting in a diner and I just happened to look over my shoulder because I'm a creep and I look at this guy and what he's writing down and saw like troll schematics and like that sort of thing, I would just think it was like a D&D
He's
sheet.
just a
Either
big-ass
that,
dork.
or you could expose yourself because there is something weird happening in this area. Like, I mean, it's like you can only be stupid so much.
But you also got to remember that this is a different country. This is
Yeah.
Norway. This is a country where
saying that
people. This is a country where people at bus stops stand 10 feet away from each other, and that's not a joke. You can find those pictures of people at bus stops, and they're all like well out of talking distance.
So I'm not
thing
gonna lie,
about-
I would do that here with the people here in America.
Yeah, see,
And
we're
the
a
thing
bunch
about-
of brash in your face Americans.
Yes.
We just lost our American audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not like we
I
have much
know.
of an audience anyway.
Was a joke.
Twice.
But yeah, this is where you get more exposition. This is where you find out that Hans is the only Trollhunter in the
Yeah.
country. He's the only one who's
He's been
doing
doing
all
this
of
for a long time.
And then you get more of him grumbling about his job, how much he hates it.
And little
So, oh, sorry, I was just gonna say that's why I enjoy him filling out in the diner
Yeah.
because he does not give
He
a
doesn't
shit.
give a
about
fuck.
if
this.
somebody was like if somebody like tapped him on the shoulder and was like, hey, what is that? He'd be like, I'm hunting trolls.
I'm hunting trolls.
Fuck off.
I don't know, honestly, that's probably the best cover up because they just go, whatever, crazy man.
So what I was going to say was they offer a little detail about the trolls in that some of them grow like what's the word, like vestibule heads or
Yeah,
something.
but they don't mean anything.
And they're not actual heads. It's not like there's like talking to each other or anything. They're literally just growths, like a predator sort of thing to
yeah.
scare off other
Attract mates
trolls.
and scare rivals.
Which I love that detail because this whole movie goes out of its way to portray these things as like very much animals and not mythical.
Yeah, they
creatures.
go out of their way to. They even scientifically explain like what happens when they're exposed to sunlight.
But we'll get to
we'll
that.
get to that. But they spend so much time like scientifically explaining everything, and that's both a love and a knock I have against this
It's
movie.
a love for me.
But we'll get to that as we keep going.
Okay, but so and the person that needed, or kind of little rewind, but there was when he was getting the blood sample, the person who was asking for it was a vet. He has this agency also has a veterinarian.
When do they go to her?
Well, he actually does
Yeah,
tell him.
he-
He's like, "Who are you talking to?" And he goes, "A veterinarian."
Yeah,
And they're like,
he,
"Oh,
he,
okay."
he doesn't, and see, and we don't meet her until, of course,
Until
a little
much
bit
later.
later. So at this point, he needs to get this blood sample. So they get the idea of going to a bridge and putting
Because
a goat
trolls live under
Under
the bridge.
bridges.
bridge. Yes, and I was actually singing.
And that's actually this
the
whole
Dora song.
this whole scene is my favorite scene of the whole movie.
And it's the Billy Goat Gruff,
'Cause
and we
three
have the
goats.
goats. Yeah, we have 3 goats.
He
up on
leads
the
a goat
bridge.
onto the bridge, and of course the sound lady is like, "Oh, this is animal cruelty. He can't do that." And he's like, "Oh, it's just bait. Nothing's going to actually happen to it."
To give a little bit of a setup,
Yes.
they do find like there's another quote unquote bear sighting, and they find this like a lot of sheep have been going missing,
Yes,
and there's
yes.
like this nest under the bridge of
And-
like remains and
And
stuff.
yeah, then they
the
explain.
news is there, and
Yeah.
Finn's there trying to explain things,
yeah.
and they're kind of trolling him this time because there are tracks again. I didn't even mean to do that, but yeah, there are tracks again, and this time they're like the left foot is on the right and the right foot is on the left, and
they
main
can't-
dude is making fun of
Actually
Finn
points
for that.
it out.
And then you see Finn go back to a van and like,
talk to real scary men in
talk
black.
to the real scary people. And so then we get to the hunt.
Yeah, and then
It's also worth mentioning that they also mention how this troll is also acting weird, so they think he might be part of what's going on too.
Right.
okay, go ahead, and it
Brings out the
explain-
goats.
Yeah.
Then you see like
He-
a
But that's
hand
he
reach
takes
out.
no. He brings a goat up there, but that doesn't work. So he brings another goat up there, but that doesn't work. So he brings another goat up there, and all the goats are different sizes. Each one's a bigger goat. So, of course, 3 billy goats gruff. And they're sitting there waiting, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a hand reaches up, grabs the middle goat, and pulls it under. And you hear a horrific crunch and bleeding, and it's... Oh.
And then they go into night vision, and you see the thing, like, munching on it and smashing it into the ground. It's a big, hulking sort of troll.
Missing an arm, too.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Anyway, and so they run to a safe spot by the car, and then they see Hans there strapping into his armor.
His armor.
He's
got armor. It's
This
just
would
this,
not have
it's,
saved
it's
him,
this
though.
shitty looking. It looks like old World War II bomb squad gear that they just
Yeah.
gave him because they didn't have the budget for anything else.
After this scene, I'm like, I understand why Hans is letting these kids film. 'Cause,
He-
like, honestly,
wants
at,
out.
at this job.
He pulls up this big ass syringe and he literally
And a bucket of blood.
and a bucket of blood.
Christian
blood, human Christian
You
blood that
gotta
he
have
has
the
a
Christian
5-gallon
blood.
bucket of.
But he says one of my
Yeah.
favorite lines. Like, he looks to the camera with, like, his armor and goes,
His
God,
visor.
I hate this shit, and walks
Do you
to the
ever wonder where he got that Christian blood from?
You could just say, like, onto your, like, blood donor form, like Christian, and they would take the patch.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, no, he didn't get
Touche.
it. But it's still kind of funny. He just has it in the back of his truck. But
He tied down a man and cut his throat.
Yes,
knowing
there we
Hans, he
are.
would have been
There's
forced
the
to.
horror movie.
But anyway, so he splashes it, and it's a great scene. The troll smells the Christian blood. He turns his back to Hans, and he's sniffing for it. So Hans goes up, and gives him a little poke, but it doesn't work. The troll turns around, takes one look at him, smacks him against a tree.
He's just down.
He's just
he doesn't
like,
even
Not
move.
smacks him, like literally
backhands him.
backhands him, pummels him, like he's dead, dude.
Picks
Like,
him
you
up,
think he's
tries
dead.
to bite him, but of course he can't
Yeah,
bite him.
the first time I saw this, he was just so limp that I was like, "Oh my god, he's dead."
He's
It's,
destroyed.
His spine
I
is
mean,
pulp.
a visual. If you haven't seen the movie, it's like low key on Avengers
Yeah.
with Hulk, like
It's
just
that.
full on smashing.
He tries
Cutie
to
Hans.
Yeah.
he tries taking a bite, can't bite through the armor. Looks at him, just drops him, and goes back under the bridge. And so, and of course, the kids are freaking out, like, "Oh my god, Hans is dead!" They run
Yeah.
up to him,
They, like,
start
poke him,
shaking
and
him,
he's like,
they poke
"Hans?
him. Hans, you okay,
okay, buddy?"
And then you just hear the most real groan ever as he sits up and he's like, "Oh man, I really hate this
Hate
job."
this job, and honestly, this is probably the most far fetched thing for me. Out of watching Trolls and everything, him getting up, not having a broken bone or
He just
anything,
gets
broken
up,
leg.
and then he picks up his UV flash bolt.
Yep.
He picks up the syringe.
He's like, "Fuck this shit." I'm
goes
doing it
under the
hard way.
bridge, and then you get the flash, and then a big gory ass explosion.
Chunks everywhere.
This
Chunks
dude is so
everywhere.
metal.
And then it does
To
like
be fair, this is Norway.
it does
Norway.
It does a perfect comedy cut to Hans and the kids like sitting just like alone, covered in blood.
viscera. He's
And-
literally scraping it off of them.
And the main guy is just like starts laughing, like, "Is this really happening?"
Anyway, they take the sample to the vet, and it's the first time meeting her, and this is where you get a little more explanation of the trolls.
I like her.
And you get a little bit of character development because they totally got a thing.
Oh, they totally got a thing going on. So anyway, she gives the explanation for like the trolls, like what happened to them. It's stuff like they can't process vitamin D or something. I don't remember all the specifics. But the younger ones, it causes their blood vessels to expand with gas and they explode, almost like a diver with the bends.
And then the
And
older
she
ones,
was-
it causes them to
Their
like
bones to
harden.
grow.
And like right before she tells them all this stuff, like she was leery about saying it, of course, because it's secret. And
Hans
she was
says, "I'll
like,
take full
"Oh, yeah, I'll take
responsibility."
full responsibility." So it's like,
But then
Hans
she-
like wants the story to come out
Yeah,
in a way.
and she
You know?
she's like almost right away too. There's almost no hesitation. She just starts talking after that. And then she actually brings up, like, well, I think it's possible for humans and trolls to live peacefully. They're just animals, you know? We
Yeah,
don't have to have
She
these...
feels bad about like the ones that turn to stone because it's a horribly painful.
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
them.
and it's painful for them to die in any way, really.
Yeah.
Like, even though
And
it's
I did,
fast.
and I
like-
did feel bad at this part, like because I was like, "Yeah, man, they're going through excruciating pain. Like it's not a quick death; it's still painful, even though it's like takes 5 seconds." to
And
do
then,
it.
and that's pretty much all that's really important that happens here, except, as Jesse said, right before they leave, there's a scene where they're kind of hugging. Hans and the vet
Yeah.
are kind of hugging each
And
other.
main
made
guy
you-
winks at the camera.
Yeah.
I made you troll stench out the heart. Do you
Troll
like
stench.
it?
Do you
I
like it?
like it.
All right,
Maybe
and
we should go on date. You talk about trolls.
I talk about trolls.
Hey.
Neither of them sound like
no,
that.
we don't really know what Norwegian
Quit.
accents sound like, and it's probably should stop trying.
Quit trolling my heart and get over here.
Oh, fuck.
I bring you the finest comedy.
You got, this is now Scottish, guys.
Sponsors,
Okay.
please contact us.
Okay,
My
but
mother is a troll.
so the next day, they're going out and venturing to see where they're possibly at, like the
I like to
caves
see it.
and stuff. So they're trying to look for rocks that have been
Out of place.
or
And I'm gonna drop total
Go ahead.
nerd cred,
Go ahead.
which is a lie because I saw this on the video. There's a point where he like stands like with a stick looking out over a valley, which is an homage to a famous painting. Continue.
Oh, and he did say something like that. He says it's just like the painting.
It's just like a painting. I do
Yeah.
like.
He did say what the painting was.
Wait,
That was funny.
if a regular movie would have done this, I would have been like, "Oh, that's stupid." They just have to mention it. But the fact that it's a bunch of shit kids.
And can I bring this up as they're driving through the countryside? It's like we're from a very flat,
Oh
hilly
God!
sort of
This
place.
is
This is
something I said
Kansas,
to my
yes.
girlfriend when I watched it with her, and it's again, if you listen to our Raw review, it's something I mentioned how they're filming
Yeah.
in France. Why aren't they filming France?
Whereas here, they're filming Norway, and it looks like fucking
It's
Lord of the
beautiful.
Rings.
It's
they cross the
I
misty
love
mountains
it.
cold.
Oh my gosh.
It's like they're literally filming on the cheap in their backyard, and they have the most beautiful filming locations
gorgeous
ever.
waterfalls
Yeah.
cascading from the mountains.
If you were to try that, do that here, you'd get a 2-hour movie about corn. There's not much else.
we
Oh
have
my
the
gosh.
Flint
We
Hills.
have, and we have wheat.
I love the nature shots in this. I love like looking
Everything's a
at
nature
temperate-
shot because of where they are.
Yeah, it's so good.
Even the ferry right at the beginning was beautiful. to look
Gorgeous
out there.
mountains peeking
Yeah.
through the clouds.
Snow
Beautiful water.
everything.
I love seeing the clouds hitting the mountains as Hans tells a kid to fuck off.
It's the best. It's the
It
best.
really is beautiful.
Absolutely gorgeous. It makes me sad.
It makes you
This
sad.
is
They're going through and finding like traps that he had set up. Like there's this
Oh, yeah.
massive, like way
Oh,
bigger than
yeah.
a bear trap where he pours like charcoal and
And-
a bit of
and
cement because
cement.
that's their favorite.
They love
treat.
eating rocks.
evidently like eating rocks and Christian people.
Yeah, exactly. Well, he says earlier that they can like you don't have to be smart when you can survive on anything because he says they're like cripplingly stupid.
Yeah.
Like as
Yeah,
far as
they're
animals go, like
insane.
super dumb.
I once saw one try to bite off its own tail and ended up rolling down the hill.
Oh
like a
yeah,
wheel.
yeah. That was pretty
sounded
funny.
funny.
I thought, the tails was weird. But one of my favorite parts while they're like venturing out is they get to this part where there's like a bunch of boulders and rocks like thrown around, and so we find out that they actually have war amongst each other, like the trolls,
The mountains
so-
and the forest trolls.
Yeah, so they hurl these rocks. I would have loved to see this battle.
It's also a really cool, like, natural explanation. Like, there's something that people would have come up with,
Yeah.
like medieval times. It's like, there's a giant boulder here, and we
Yeah.
don't know why. Trolls threw it.
It's kind of like Stonehenge in a way, but it's like, why were these rocks left here? Well, let's say that the trolls were throwing it
When
because of
really
a
they
fight.
just fell down from the
Yeah, right, yeah.
So good.
So I would have loved to have seen this battle.
And
I know we can't have it, but
At this point of the movie,
This
also,
movie did not have a big budget.
no, it's
No.
worth mentioning that
No.
as much as we're gushing about how cool the trolls look and everything, the effects in this movie are terrible.
Okay,
For the time,
For the time, they're fine, and for
And
the
for the
budget,
8 years
and for the
ago,
budget,
guys.
it's fine.
I think
But
At the time?
I think they were fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
they had CGI in the 90s.
but it was
There
like,
was-
it was like you and me going out with $10 million.
PlayStation 1 graphics, sure, in
Yeah.
the 90s.
I saw Spawn.
I saw Spawn.
I think they were fine.
No, they were fine. They were fine. It's just kind
Like
of
the
subpar
first time I
CGI.
watched this, I watched it on kind of like a crappy TV that was a little fuzzy and like everything's at night. So I thought it was like,
Well,
oh,
that-
those
that's-
are good looking trolls.
That's where it kind of benefits from its found footage type thing. So it's allowed to look shitty, like the quality of the film itself.
There's
so.
this one thing I want to nitpick. It's not about the movie. It was like I was looking on IMDb because I was curious about the budget itself. And the thing was like I was wondering, oh, how much money did they make out of this? Like, what was the gross amount? And like the budget they put in in the currency they use there, but the gross they use in American dollars.
That's
That's
frustrating.
confusing.
Yeah, it was really frustrating to work. I was like, did it bomb or
Did it bomb or did it
How
win?
much was it? How many kroner?
Is that what it's
you
called?
know,
I think so.
All right.
I
cool.
think it was 19 or 17.
Welcome to the
Let me
geography
check. You guys keep talking. I'll
So what
I'll
happens
bring it up.
next? They
So-
go to the vet. They leave.
It
they look
basically
through all
just
this
turns
stuff.
into a road trip movie
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, look how beautiful this place where we live is. A bunch of nature shots, which does kind of fit into the theme of the story.
I was starting to grow a little bit sick of the nature shots.
That's
beautiful.
I mean,
But
I
It
loved
was
it.
it was
loved
it was really nice to look
Like,
at.
I honestly
and then I was
wanted
like,
to see if I can apply for this troll thing.
I want to see the Mountainwood troll.
And
thing.
one of my gripes with a lot of found footage movies is the really unrealistic dialogue when they're going for a realistic, gritty feel. And granted, this movie was in Norwegian, so I don't speak it. So the it could have been really shitty dialogue, but it sounded like they were making little quips to each other and they were
I
talking
believed
like
it.
friends.
It felt very natural.
Yeah, it felt really natural.
Now it's my turn to bring up something we forgot.
Damn it.
Way earlier, they take a little look inside Hans's trailer, where we
damn it.
see
Oh,
like
yeah.
the tails that are cut off and like how he makes the troll stench,
More-
the UV
and
lights.
the sunblock.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
can't.
she's like, "Aren't you going to get cancer from this?" And he's like, "Oh, I wear something."
I still right, and there's a bunch of empty and half-used
Because
bottles. of
he
sunscreen.
can't sleep.
He can't sleep in the dark, so
anymore.
he's neon lights or UV lights everywhere in his trailer, all over the outside.
And we also have to mention that he's still pasty white for some reason.
'Cause of
He's
the
only
sun.
using
He was darker than they were.
He's
Yeah.
darker
It's
than they were,
Norway.
and he
Still,
was a
he's under
Norwegian.
those lights, you would think he would be crispy golden.
Well, he was a Norwegian, and he wore sunblock. Before I stopped
SPF
wearing
50.
sunblock, I looked like that. so.
SPF 50 though. That he would have still baked.
God damn.
Yeah, I know, right? I used to be whiter than you
I
too.
know.
But anyway, this is also.
People
I
whiter
also
than
really
you
like this scene because the whole movie Hans comes off as gruff and angry and tired.
But every now and again, you get a peek into like the vulnerability.
because you look in it and he's got these gorgeous watercolor paintings of the trolls he's seen of the landscape. He even draws little cartoons like.
Well, yeah, like the paintings. Some of them are like of like folkloric happy trolls with like shoes and like little fairies.
But then like one in particular is like he's kind of showing them how to look at the news to find trolls, and he shows them a story in a newspaper about a bridge that collapsed,
That was great.
and then he reveals that like, well, what actually happened is this troll bumped his head against it and it fell apart. And then when he shows them like his recreation, it's like a goofy little drawing
kind
with the
of
troll
adorable.
literally
It looks
saying
very
"ow" or the Norwegian equivalent of "ow."
I will.
like to draw.
I will say one thing we did kind of, I think we didn't bring up is the fact why they keep dropping these bears was the fact that there was cattle mutilated.
Yeah. No, I
And
think we brought that up before.
I don't think we talked.
I don't think
about,
we did.
I don't think we
You-
talked
you
about the
mentioned
We
the
sheep.
mentioned
sheep.
that they brought bears, but we didn't.
Yeah,
No,
we
no,
didn't
you
say
did,
why.
You did mention that a bunch
That's
of
why,
sheep
and
were
I
going
just thought
missing.
For
about
the
that.
troll.
And
Oh.
if I'm wrong,
and another like the biggest sandbag of people dying ever. They said, "Oh, a couple Russian tourists got mauled by a bear. It's fine."
Yeah.
They got eaten by trolls.
And I got eaten by trolls.
yeah.
So after that little stint in the van, the
RV.
they go and they find this little like what do you call those, like cargo containers full of tires.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Because you
And-
find out
tire.
trolls like to chew on tires.
because they're delicious, and you see like there's a big dent in the container, and it's like, oh yeah, one of them tried to kick their way in.
to get to the good
you know what's
stuff.
funny? I used to have like a little Lego cars that had the rubber tires,
Mm-hmm.
so I would pop
Would
them
you
out
chew
of my
on the
mouth.
tires
Yeah,
too?
I did.
Yeah.
I absolutely
Everyone
did.
did.
And
I
another
don't know
thing-
how many of them I swallowed.
Another thing that happens
We do
is
not condone this behavior.
Don't
During-
put Legos in your mouth.
during one of the documentary
Just the tires.
sections.
Just smoke.
They're talking about like the territories and stuff, and he's pointing out a tire that's like embedded into a hillside and saying it's like this one hasn't been chewed on, so we know that the trolls haven't like
Haven't
gone
been
this way,
leaving
haven't
because they
broken
can't.
this
Because they
territory.
literally can't resist.
But yeah, as they're going on this road trip, he's telling you it's like this is their territory, this is their territory.
It's pretty much just troll exposition.
yes,
So
delivered in a natural way because it is a documentary.
it is a
and
documentary. It is supposed to be
Of
kind
course,
dry.
you would ask this if you
Yeah.
were driving along with this guy.
Yeah.
So now, do we want to go to the point where they find this cave?
Yep. They're driving along and they see this like torn up tree line that's just like torn.
They
all out.
I like it because it's one of my favorite things. It almost reminds me of Parks and Rec whenever they're talking to regular people and they come off as kind of stupid. Where
Oh, it
like
was a tornado.
well in Parks it's like,
Yeah.
in Parks and Rec they'll talk to the citizens of the town and they say the dumbest, most inane shit, and they're not quite at that level. But at that scene where they find the leveled tree line and it's like, oh, the tornado blew through. It was
But all
weird though. There weren't any clouds and we didn't see a tornado.
And all the
And
trees
it's
are
just-
falling in
yeah.
different directions.
That and you also
Bertha
have.
Macklin, FBI.
And then they just go, I don't know, and they leave.
And then Hans points out, it's like, how did no one see like gigantic creatures running across this
A
open
literal
field?
herd of stampede of trolls. Anyway,
And then they find the cave.
they
It's
find
like
the
an
old
mine
mining
shaft.
cave. They are obviously attracted to
Yeah.
chewing on the ore and everything.
And of course,
Now, I
this
wanna-
is stupid.
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I
This,
was gonna.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Somebody fucking talk.
My bad.
So they
I
go
was
into the
gonna
cave.
God, God, Cindy, I'm sorry.
sorry about my coughing.
Liam, go.
All right.
These trolls are like my favorite trolls in this movie. Like,
Because they got big old noses.
Oh,
they
look
got
like-
big old
they look
noses.
so
They
goddamn
remind me of
goofy.
like the terrifying Ewok scenes in Star Wars.
They remind me of like Ed from the Addams Family. Like all
Yeah!
three.
I would say they honestly reminded me of Alf.
Oh my
they do
god!
remind me of Alf.
Here's the thing.
Big goofy elves.
We're jumping the gun a
little bit.
As they're leading up to the cave, cameraman is a bit more nervous than usual. He's
also
always been like nervous and antsy. It's like, oh, we shouldn't go there, or oh, we shouldn't do this, man, or oh, we should leave.
Also, I feel like this is the first time you even see his face.
You see him at one point in like the truck, and like he turns around and is like polishing the lens.
I guess.
He looked like a dork.
No, but but that scene happens right before the cave scene, and as soon as I saw his face for the first time, I was like, we all know what's going to happen.
Oh yeah, because he of course the nervous naysayer has to be the one that's. Yeah. So we're going into the cave. We're sure it's empty because he has a little troll call.
Yeah.
I love the troll call.
And it's nighttime, so all the trolls are out. No, it's nighttime.
I
Yeah,
missed
you don't
that
win.
twice. I didn't know he had a call.
Yeah, he goes like.
Oh, okay.
It's the coolest sounding.
I
whistle
still
ever.
wouldn't have went in, but all right, that's just me.
And so they get into like the nest, the lair, which smells like total garbage,
Smells
and
like
then they
troll.
start hearing like in the back as like the trolls enter the cave, and they're like, "Shit, we can't leave."
Yeah.
So
Now they're stuck.
They find a little cubby, like a little hole in the cave, and they like tuck themselves away in it. And then you see. Well, first you see them like lumbering in the night vision. They're just like big dorky looking
So
things.
goofy. I love it.
They're adorable.
Well, no.
They're all furry. One like slams its ass directly like at the entrance of their little cubby, and you see, and this is when the troll stench is happening, where he's all like, the cameraman is all like, troll.
Give it to me.
troll
Give it to
stench,"
me.
and
He's rubbing it on his
everywhere.
clothes. He's
freaking
rubbing
out.
it under his shirt.
It's funny because it's showing him when he's like nearly crying, and actually when it cuts back to Hans, he's like asleep.
Yeah,
because he's
he
like,
literally
we're just gonna
falls
wait it out."
asleep.
And when it cuts to the other two, they look like they're just more intrigued than anything. They're just like, oh, yeah, it's trolls, it's cool. Like they're actually kind of cool with this the whole movie.
But this
Until
guy's
like the
freaking
troll
out.
farted.
He
Oh, yeah, troll farts.
he zips up his jacket over his face. He pulls his hat down. He kind of looks like Jesse when he gets into work in the morning, with your hat pulled way down over your head. Oh, you don't wear the hat anymore.
We got sharks fired.
It's been a while
Shots
since I've
fired.
seen you.
fired.
So
I'm personally hurt. I'm gonna go cry now.
that's fine. Anyway,
Don't worry, you can edit this out.
No, I'm leaving it in. It's hilarious.
No.
every time someone cries, you have to just edit that part louder. Is that how it works? Anyway, and he's just freaking the fuck out.
And Hans even like leans over.
It-
It's like, calm down.
It even
Don't
gets to
dare
the point
sweat.
where Hans notices. Well, no, because he doesn't say that right away.
Oh, right.
Because he leans over, he's like, "What's going on?" And then he mentions to him, "I lied. I'm Christian."
And he's like, "Oh fuck!"
Don't.
And,
that's where he says, "Don't even think
and then
about
and
sweating."
then the trolls start like sniffing and like getting up because they were all like asleep and stuff, and they're like, "Oh shit!"
And then
Oh,
he starts
they were farting
praying
too.
Yeah.
Wait,
We forgot about we got
No,
the
we
farting.
mentioned the
Yeah,
fart.
we mentioned
Oh, the fart, dude, that was hilarious.
It was really funny.
I was like, could you imagine the smell? It was already stinking now, but holy
It
shit!
was
And
loud
they were-
and long.
And there was like nothing blocking that from it. They got full frontal.
Yeah.
Like
And Hans didn't
fart.
even flinch.
Hans like, ooh,
best.
my favorite perfume. Reminds me of that.
You were so mean to Hans.
No, I'm not.
Hans is
I
the
I'm doing
best.
this out of love, I swear.
Anyway,
I wish I could be Hans.
anyway, this is something it's again because it kind of fits the reason why I liked but didn't like the movie. He starts praying because he's freaking out,
And he's like, "Shut the fuck up."
and he starts praying, and the second he starts praying, the trolls start freaking out, and so they make a break for it. Haas has his flash bulb, and he's like,
He's like taking shots behind as they're all just running away. And
he
it shows,
manages
like,
to get a couple.
There's that one point where a camera like pans back and you see them all like roaring and raging. Like
You
5
realize
feet
there's
away.
way more than you thought.
And it's kind of like that was kind of scary.
That was
like I
actually
would
pretty
be okay
good.
with
That
that.
was
I would
effective.
not. Yeah, I would be
The
shitting
and the
myself as I'm
camera
running
and
out.
like of course he's running and he's struggling
And
the
he's the
camera's
furthest one behind.
And well, my favorite part is the camera's like switching from night vision to regular because he's freaking out. He's pressing all the buttons. Anyway,
I'm surprised they didn't drop it.
That's
I
actually
never had a
one of
problem
my
with like,
favorite
why are you filming this during this movie?
I-
Like even now, it's like maybe it was like
I was
When-
I was expecting
when I-
that.
when
I was
it's-
expecting to see a
when it-
why are
when-
you filming this? Put the camera down.
well, no, because I don't mind it when the movies like this because they are a documentary crew, at least in training. This is what they're going to do.
Like-
but when it's a movie like The Visit and it's just a bunch of shit kids, that's when it's like, all right, come on,
I could believe he's like instinctually holding onto the camera
because this is what he's been training and learning to do
And
his
see,
whole life.
and at the same time, this is where, like, at the point in the movie, especially the second time I saw it, I related to the cameraman because I am Christian, and so
We couldn't take Ron with us on one.
Yeah, so me
go to
personally
Norway.
would still be intrigued. Like, I would want to still put myself out
course.
there, because I would want to see this. I mean, who wouldn't? But at the same
Apparently
time, I would be the I would
Would
be
I
the
wanna-
one who.
Would I want to be a troll hunter? Absolutely not. Would I want to be the troll documenter? Hell yes.
Hell yes. You know,
Troll-
so
I would.
I don't
troll
want to be the troll hunter.
troll hunter. Yeah.
He's the coolest. But
Well,
anyway,
okay. For those of us in the audience, Sydney kind of is Hans. He looks up to Hans. He's his hero.
he's my hero. That's actually does something that keeps coming up. Is the camera crew keeps saying, "Well, you're like a hero," and then he goes,
superhero.
"You're like a superhero," and he goes, "Don't even start that."
And going back, we see they're running away, and the cameraman gets picked up, and you hear like, oh my god, crunch, 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 crunch.
They
and that's when the little part
tastefully
of me
don't.
died.
Yep.
They don't show the gore.
Nope.
Which is, I should worth mentioning, this is a PG-13 movie. They don't show the gore, but it kind of feels tasteful that way. Like, because the whole movie's not even gratuitously gory.
It's
in
just
the
a
first place.
horrifying
and
thing
see-
because no one wants to get.
And that's
eaten.
where I kind of felt it was more of a monster movie. We didn't need the scene of the gore. We like the fear. You saw there was fear, and you could feel it.
It was effective.
You know?
I have
It
a
was
weird
effective.
theory about humans having like this instinctual fear of being eaten because like every culture has like giants that
Well,
like are
that just eat
man-eaters and
people
stuff.
for
Well,
no
if you,
reason.
yeah, and if you think
So
about
many
it,
creatures eat
right
us.
now we're at the top of the food chain in a way.
Where we deserve to be.
Yeah, but
Until Attack on
it would
Titan.
be really crazy if something was above us, and so yeah, it would
It
be
doesn't
scary.
feel natural to be eaten.
Yeah.
In this modern
Especially
world.
in modern day.
But
Like,
yes,
people
so-
still are terrified
Like,
of
where'd
animals
Jesse
and
go?
stuff.
Oh shit!
The,
You
the
got
camera
it.
is cracked. It falls to the ground, and then
I love the. Oh, go ahead.
it
No.
turns
It turns
on
off.
again, and it turns off, and then it turns on. And
It was the broom girl.
Yeah, the
she
sa-
she
it's
grabs
called a
it.
boom mic.
So, as like a trooper, and of course for the movie, you know, she turns on the camera because we got to keep rolling. We got to keep rolling.
But it's also a very like human moment because like she just wanders over. She was just turning it on to see if it still worked,
Yeah.
and then she like goes over to just like sit and like.
Yeah, she doesn't
contemplate.
even pick it up. She's like, oh, it
And-
still works.
and-
Lens is cracked.
The main guy is doing the same thing, and you could tell it's hitting him hard because he was the one that's like, "Oh, come on, let's do this, we go." And he was the leader, so he brought this guy to his
So
death,
he's
who was
kinda-
probably his friend.
He's kind of got this survivor's guilt thing going on.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, we've never seen the cameraman
there-
until just now.
There's like a lot of characterization in this movie that doesn't happen the way it normally does.
Yeah.
Where it's like, this is my backstory, this is blah, 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 blah. It happens in like how they look at each other, how they like banter, and like this.
They're
moment
college buddies, literally.
where they're taking this really hard, and
But-
Hans is like, "I could take you back if you want," and they're like, "No,
No, we
we're
have to
still
keep
going."
going. We're in this now.
Yeah.
And Hans is like, all right, I understand.
Which I like. I respect that.
Yeah. And so they get a new camera. They get a new camera woman. She
And-
comes up. She comes off the train. You're introduced to her. She shakes your hands, and the first thing, it's not even Hans that asks it, but the first thing someone asks is, "Are you Christian?" Which is where you get one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Is, well, yeah. Why,
No,
why
no,
are you the only one
no.
being weird about this, Rod? She starts off. They ask her if she's Christian, and she goes, "No, I'm Muslim." And then that leads to my favorite line in the whole movie, where they both look at Hans, and I think it's the boom mic lady. She's like, "Is that going to be a problem?" And Hans just goes, "I guess we'll see. I don't know."
I honestly don't know.
Because there's
It's
no
never come
handbook.
up
There's
before.
no handbook.
Yeah.
to this.
It's like you all know the fairy tales. It's like, oh, if I fell from, I smell the blood of a Christian man. But it's like, does that apply to everyone?
Does it apply to all religions?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't think it ever comes up.
No.
But that is
Are
actually
the Catholics safe?
no. I
Are you
think
sure?
I think they're the most in
But they're
danger.
Catholics.
But they're Christian.
Yeah,
But
there's
It's
no.
Christian. Well,
Okay, the
I could be
definition-
wrong.
It's like,
Listen.
it's like
Christian
It's
is
like,
a big
do-
umbrella,
do
and
troll-
underneath it is
So you get
Catholic.
do trolls like Diet Coke
No.
or do they just like all Coke
They like
products?
all-
No, but listen.
Are you
the
sure?
the definition of a Christian is a follower of Jesus Christ, which Catholic
and
religion is.
I could be wrong. I'm not
I'm not
completely
Catholic.
up to date on my Northern European lore, but I'm pretty sure trolls were invented by the local. I don't want to say pagan because I don't think that's right for
Oh
that
man,
area.
I don't know. So many cultures have.
Yeah,
like,
but they're
versions
definitely
of
not.
trolls.
But then, like, the Christians came in, and
Right.
then
And
they were
correct-
dying.
Correct
and
me if I'm wrong, but like the way I remember the story, like the fairy tale, like it was said, I smell the blood of an Englishman.
well,
I
yeah.
remember that too.
well,
Yeah,
but you got to remember that
I
a
don't-
lot of early American culture comes from the English, so
Okay.
that's where that gets changed.
Like-
but
And
like,
you know
my,
what
my
the English
personal,
had?
my personal theory is the Christians come in, they move into the country, and they start dropping like flies because it's a super hard country to live in. But all the natives are fine, and so the Christians think, oh, there's something in the woods killing Christians, and that's where the whole thing about
Folklore
trolls.
always has like a trail of stories that precede it that are like all different variations.
That's
so-
my own personal
Mainly
theory. I'm
'cause
sure.
Europe
I'm sure.
sucks at its job.
I'm sure historians have figured this out a long time ago. So
So they get the new camera woman, and they go in. He gets the call to like go into troll territory.
yeah,
for
it's
some
like go
reason.
to the mountains. Something.
And
really
he's like,
fucked
I won't do it.
Head
so
north.
Do it.
Head north to the troll territory. That's when we see the. Oh, go ahead.
The first thing they find with the new camera girl is this just like massive laid down field of trees that are all like torn and knocked over.
It's
and
like a
he's
hurricane blew through.
Yeah, and he's like, I've never seen anything like this before, and it must be a Yotna,
Yotna.
which are awesome.
Have you ever seen a Yotna? And he says, I'm the only person who's ever seen one and lived.
Dear God.
I do like the fact that
I like the build-up.
Yeah.
I think her name was Malika, the new camera woman. The one thing I like about her is the fact that she just jumped on. Like, she didn't have any doubt or anything.
No, she has
No, they
was
didn't
like-
even tell her. Well, they didn't tell her when they called her, and then she shows up, and she's like, what are you filming? They're like, trolls?
And she's like, "Are you guys serious?" And like they ask her
Yeah.
before, it's like, "Oh, what have you filmed?" It's like lions, and she's like, and they're like, "Oh, good,
Good,
that's
good,
good.
good,
Those
good.
lions, it's dangerous."
And then,
At
of
least
course,
lions
as
can
we're-
enter homes.
as they're heading north, that's when we see these power lines.
Yes.
And we find out that they're not truly power lines.
And
They're-
that's another thing. I'm pretty sure this is another thing that like is kind of a hot topic deal in Norway.
I'm sure it's a dig
Or
at,
the
like,
power lines going
bureaucracy.
through.
yeah.
Because like they're going through, and then this is where Hans says like, "Well, there's nothing out here." Or they mentioned like, well, one of them mentions like, "I don't know why they put all these power lines out here anyway. There's nothing out here to power."
Yeah, there's
and then
nothing
Hans
connected to.
Then Hans is like, "Well, they're not really power lines. It's a giant electric fence."
And he finds them kind of pretty.
yeah.
I thought that was a fun detail.
Well, because in like they actually it comes up later in the movie too. But like I think like those big power lines going through those really. I think that might be a hot topic issue over there.
Yeah,
It's a
probably
hot button
is.
issue.
Because the clip they show at the end is like an actual thing. They just kind of tweaked it a little.
Yeah, and then like it's kind of like the way a lot of people complain about windmills.
Right.
Bullshit complain about windmills.
So
Anyway.
they go into this power plant because they're like, well, how could it have broken out?
You
in here?
get another putsy idiot doing his job.
He's apparently a Norwegian comedian,
And
and so is Hans. The actor who plays Hans.
yeah,
is
I
Hans.
actually looked it up. He was like a writer for a bunch of like sitcoms and comedy shows.
He plays grumpy well.
He does.
of course, this guy that runs the power plant, he's not in the loop.
He's not in the loop. He's
not-
just
like,
he's a regular.
those
guy.
were supposed to withstand hurricane force winds, and I don't know what could possibly have torn them down.
I don't know what possibly doing that. And then it's like, well, and then they actually mention he's like, do you notice how the lines just go in a big circle? They don't
Yeah,
connect
it's
to anything.
like,
and he's
it's
like,
like you never wonder why or
he's like,
anything like that.
No,
Like,
I guess I didn't. That is weird, isn't it?
And you know what I
because
love
it was the guy. It was the guy that got bit. It was like he was trying to hint to say, "Why don't you ever ask any questions?"
The thing I want to point out is then he asks like, "Oh, you guys are for college, right?" And then he looks over at Hans and is like, "Are you the teacher?" And he's just like, "No,
Nope, 9.
And he offers no other explanation.
Well, and then it's also worth mentioning that by around this point, the host starts complaining about feeling sick.
Yes.
It comes on and off. There's moments where he looks like he's about to faint, and moments where he's fine.
He's not having a
Yeah,
good time.
Thomas.
He
So,
falls ill.
so then after this, they establish just like, oh, the TSS has a cabin up in these mountains because under these mountains are where the Jotnar live, and so the plan is to go there and wait it out and see what's tearing everything apart.
But with them finding all those things like the trees and stuff, they realize they're probably it's signs of a Jotnar,
Jotnar.
which is Jotnar.
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
It's foreign.
Yeah.
He said it
you
multiple
said it?
times.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Okay,
I talked about the trees
But
and
it
how it
was
was a
a,
Jotnar.
it was a
starting to
job.
sound
cut
more
that shit
feral.
out.
No, leave it in.
No,
We left it me insulting Jesse.
Yeah. So they're there, and something happens like before the troll show. Oh yeah, they have exposition about why Hans is like nervous about all this.
Does he tell him, or do they?
He tells him.
No, because I think he actually.
This is when the phone call comes through.
He's talking on the phone, and then you get like I think
That's later.
It cuts
I thought
back
it was at
to.
this time.
Well, no, it cuts back to like at some point during this. It cuts back to footage of the nurse. There's like an interview that you don't get to see earlier in the movie with the vet.
I have
And
no memory of this.
Well, she's
I
the
don't
one who
either.
explains the backstory, what Hans
No.
did. Because he doesn't tell them.
Yeah,
I
he
know for a
does.
fact he doesn't
he
tell
does
them.
too.
No, Hans.
He's all like, "Oh, they wanted to build this like tunnel through this place, and they had me go and like kill all the men, the women." The
Okay,
children."
okay, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm
Not
back in,
just the
I'm
men,
back
Not
in
just the
Jesse.
troll
but
men,
the
but the
women.
troll women.
I'm-
And the children too.
I
Anyway,
hate them.
Anyway.
I hate them all.
I slaughtered them like animals.
Of course, we have to have a Star
We're
Wars
going,
trivia.
All right, we're breaking into prequels
I'm
again.
making fun of like the most dramatic moment of the movie.
Yes.
I don't like troll stench. It's rough. It's coarse.
It's coarse. It gets everywhere.
Okay, I'm
Anyway,
ready to
anyway,
stop to
anyway,
this.
anyway.
Stop to this.
Yes.
The whole story is that the government wanted to build a train,
Tunnel.
underground sort of thing, and he and the TSS tried to get them to not, but they didn't anyway, and so he had to go in and kill like the entire
Everything.
population of
All
trolls.
on his own too.
Yep, and there was it was like directly in troll territory, so he killed like the men, the women, the children too, kids that didn't even know how to walk yet. It's very
Very brutal.
it's almost flashback esque.
And this is when you first start to realize that maybe this guy isn't just in it because he hates his job. Maybe he really does legitimately hate what's happening. Because obviously he does sympathize with what the veterinarian says earlier. And then of course you get those scenes like he's painting the trolls thoughtfully, and it's
Yes, Rod.
No, just coughing.
it's fine.
But yeah, it was a good scene. Gives us a lot
I
of
have to
character
apologize.
about him, and
And then immediately afterwards,
you hear like,
and then one of my favorite, like this is one of those cliches that can show up wherever, and I always love to see it. Flocks and flocks, thousands of crows, birds, just flying over the mountains, running from something.
as you hear this just deep thump, thump, thump,
and a roar that shakes the cabin.
and they're all like, "Oh shit!" And they all run outside.
No,
and
they
start-
even run outside. They just get like a footprint or something from the window.
Well, no, they deal that happens, but then they like go and they deal with what's. That's when he gets the phone call because he's trying to set up all of his stuff.
Should Yeah. be fine then.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We had a little side thing go
Break.
on. We're gonna-
Suspicious
we're gonna
cuts.
put, We're gonna put that into the. We're gonna put some of the.
Okay, we're restarting over.
No, we're not. That's staying.
So, all right. So,
They go outside. Hans is dealing with a little Jeep thing going on, and then we get a phone call, and we find out the cause for all of this insanity.
is rabies.
Yay!
Which I thought was stupid.
Oh, I
Makes
loved
perfect
it.
sense.
I loved it. Anyway, they have rabies, and then the
The
host
main
starts.
dude has rabies.
So he's freaking out. He's like, "I don't have rabies." It's like, dude, you have rabies. I don't have rabies.
Dogs have rabies. People don't have rabies.
People
I thought
don't
that was
have
a really
rabies.
dumb thing to
That's-
say
well,
because
that's a good line,
No,
though. I
but,
like it.
but that is like the mindset.
No,
like,
yeah.
You know,
Well,
like,
it's like because people can get mange.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm
but,
still gonna make fun of him. Like it
Yeah.
makes sense that he would say it in like his panic, but I'm still gonna
but
be
it's
like, dude,
it's still stupid. Like if one of you said it, I'd say it's a stupid thing to say. But
that was
anyway,
retarded, Jesse.
anyway, I think now
I
is this.
forgot that we can't say that.
No, it's fine. We'll leave it in.
yeah.
They. I
Jesse.
think is this when you get your first shot of the beast?
No.
Oh no, okay. And this is the reveal for what's on top of the RV.
Yes, a giant like flashy.
A
thing.
giant like anti-aircraft spotlight, massive, sits on top of the Jeep.
For some reason, they go back inside, and that's when we get the reveal.
Oh, you see the Bigfoot.
I call it Lola. It's the light of my life.
The light of the
Well,
light.
see,
Why are you so big?
Why?
before we
Why?
move on,
I love Hans. I
Damn,
just-
stop.
my thing about the rabies thing, I just felt it wasn't like these trolls were like something of an or like not of our world, like it's fairy in a
No,
way.
I want them to
But
be of
no,
our
but
world.
what I'm saying is like they have such a common disease, you know, as in rabies, and I hate that.
I like that.
And I thought
It's something things get all
I
the
thought,
time.
well, see, and I thought what was going to happen is we're going to find out that the dude that was bit was going to somehow turn into a troll in a way.
Well, I would have been really upset if that
I would
happened.
have been so mad.
Because it's like,
I
it's like that whole thing where it's like they tried really hard to scientifically explain everything, and I was actually worried that like she's going to get a phone call or he's going to get a phone call and it's going to be like, "Be careful, there's a big curse" or something.
But see, but then
the
here-
ancient witch cast a spell on you.
But here's
Did you
my
find
thing: is
that
like,
with your
where did these
microscope?
trolls? I want to know an origin in a way. Like, I want to know
They're animals,
they've
just like
always
everything
been
else.
there.
they've always been.
They've
there.
always been there.
in Norway.
and only in Norway.
Yeah,
They're
Pretty
only in Norway.
Well, they're in Norway isn't the only country that has troll legends. It's they could be all over the Northern Europe.
You know, kind of like
Russia.
how Wendigos.
Yeah, the whole Wendigo thing. Like they're specifically a
This
Canadian
makes
North
perfect
America
sense to
thing.
me. I don't know.
Yeah.
The rabies thing is still.
Everything gets rabies. The troll literally could have even eaten something that had rabies and probably
Or a
caught
raccoon
rabies.
could have been them. I
Yeah.
know there aren't raccoons in Norway, but
But something small could have just pecked at his foot, and that's enough. That would have been enough to give it rabies.
Yeah, there's a lot of body mass to get pecked at with rabies.
I know,
Yeah.
but I would hope that a disease like that wouldn't transfer to a troll.
That's why they're all so caught off guard because they're
Okay,
like,
so
what's
this is
going
the
on?
part I hate of the movie.
Han
so-
said the trolls were mammals, like early on in the movie. Too.
They're just animals. There's
Yeah.
nothing special about them,
And
which
they're-
does
they're
kind of fall into one of my
like
complaints. But I'll get
mammals.
to that later.
Okay.
like mammals.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was just one thing I wasn't really surprised at. I was like, oh, that's a mammal.
I thought it was a cool twist because I was worried the twist was going to be something super over
I
the
agree
top.
with Cindy. I thought it was going to be like an ancient curse or something. And
Yeah.
then, like what it was, and I was like, cool.
Cool, it's just
Oh,
rabies.
Fuck the rabies.
Fight us in
But,
real life.
Hey, Ron. Hey, Ron. hey, Ron. You know, you just
Oh,
gotta
fuck
you
off.
just gotta look at like the most important role or like the most important life lesson in movie history. Predator 2. Shit happens. So
Predator 2.
yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So
Fuck.
hey, a troll gets rabies.
Whatever.
Shit happens.
So
Gary
they look
Busey
through-
in your life.
They look through the
Let's get
window,
back.
and there's a giant troll, and it's all like, "Hey guys, what's up? I can talk."
No, it doesn't
That's
talk.
not what
It
happens.
doesn't
No.
actually
That's not
talk.
what happens.
It gives
Oh
this
my
big
God.
roar. That's worth mentioning. This thing's not just big. It's like
It's
hundreds.
kaiju big.
It's hundreds of feet. It's impossibly big.
It's
It
literally
lives
the
in a
size
mountain.
of a mountain.
I
Yeah.
don't want to say that I watched like a video that was like comparing movie monsters, but I watched a video that said comparing movie monsters, and it was like 220 feet.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It looks like it'd be about that big.
Yeah.
Anyway, Hans is like, all right, let's go. We got to get
Well,
out.
no, he drives away.
He
And
does.
they're all like, "What the fuck, man?"
They think he's leaving them, but really he's trying
He's like,
to
"I'm
just
gonna lead him
distract
away,"
it.
and he starts playing. What does he start playing? He starts playing Assad.
Just starts playing. I don't know. I'm not that familiar with. I think it's just an old Christian folk song.
Uh-huh.
Probably might even be
And then you see the thing getting all mad and like blasting, its
freaking
ears.
out.
No, we shall continue.
That should be fine.
All right.
But anyway, he blasting the music, and that's when you realize the thing's a giant spotlight. He flashes it in its face, and it's
And it's like,
lunges back.
and it like swats it away, and
Mm-hmm.
it's bothering him. And he's not that like peak performance either because he's all rabid and like
Really
foaming
sick.
at the mouth, and you see his giant beard.
Yeah, and
To
I love
be
his
fair,
giant
he
beard.
didn't. Oh, I thought we were still talking about Thomas.
now we're talking about the troll.
My bad.
You were having your own conversation.
I don't know. I saw a spider or something.
You were flashing a light in his face.
Anyway, they flashlight the troll. They're trying to beat it, trying to weaken it, trying to get it down. But then the light runs out of juice.
So he drives by and he picks up all the peoples because they're all like, "Hey,
like,
don't
alright.
leave us behind."
Shit's hitting the fan at this point, so he's like, "Get in. We're getting through this or not." And he starts driving. He's got to recharge those batteries. Got to get the light back into
And
performance.
they, for some reason, pick up a guy, like a seismologist.
yeah,
dude.
he was a seismologist, like because like that troll's been stopping around.
He's like waving him down, like, "Help!"
It's weird. It's out of nowhere. It makes sense.
And it has nothing to do with how the movie ends.
No, I think he's probably honestly he could have just been a friend of. It could have been like a Sam Raimi situation where he's just a
We could
friend
put
of
you
the
in the
director.
movie.
So it doesn't have to be explained.
Right.
Yeah.
This is found footage.
So, yeah, they just-
Well,
pick
they
up a
do.
guy.
They do actually explain it, and it makes sense he'd be there because this 200-foot tall troll is stomping around.
And
all
he was
rabid.
trying to figure out, it's like, "Are there earthquakes?
What's going on? Anyway, and then like so they bring this guy in. They drive. They try flashing a couple more times, but nothing seems to be working.
And then they decide to try to get out in front of it.
Yeah, and then they tried again. Still doesn't really seem to work. It's definitely getting weaker. It's having to stop, take some breaths. They're really fucking this thing up, and so they just
It's like a
book
strobe
it.
light. in
They
a way.
just drive because it's actually getting pretty close to dawn at this point. Like the lights, the world's starting to get that blue tinge it gets right before the sun comes up. So they're like, all right, we just got to beat the clock. We just got to keep going. So they just book it and go. And then is this when they notice the other cars on the road?
No.
No, it's a
No.
little bit later. Okay,
That's way later.
That's way
You know,
later.
There's one thing I was curious about. You would want to have a seismologist working for the TSS.
Yes.
Because it would be like, oh hey, there's this.
This is where
there's
it's
a
moving.
Jotun moving over here. Yeah,
Mhm.
you would think
You'd
there
want
would
one of
be
those,
something
but
like
you
that.
definitely get the impression that they're super low budget, super need
He's got
need
the-
to know basis.
They don't
the
get funded
budget
well.
of 1960s Marvel.
Yes.
So they're trying to get out in front of it. They drive between its feet, and it's
Really
giant
cool
and
shot.
it's huge. And then it like smacks their car,
Flips
and then
them
they
over.
like roll over, and it's bad time. And then Hans is like knocking on the window. It's like, "You all okay in there?" And they're like, "Yep." And they crawl out, and then they see the old thing a few like a mile away. And it's like heaving over.
It's huffing and puffing.
It's on hands are on its knees. It's clearly about to die.
Mhm.
And then he's all like, "That road will take you to the highway. I hope you got enough footage." And they're like, But where will you go?
And he grabs the flashbulb. That same flashbulb. I gotta mention that I actually really like this weapon
I
because
do too.
it's literally just like when you have your school pictures and they have that big annoying bulb in the hood, and it's just like attached to a rifle butt. Like it's the coolest. Like it's so simple and so hobbled together. Like everything else this guy has to use. It's great. Anyway, he wanders out.
The thing's roaring and raising a ruckus.
It's raising a ruckus, but it's not really moving. This thing's obviously really messed up.
Yeah.
So he doesn't even sprint. He's kind of like a light little jog out to it.
And he pauses as he stands there before he like lifts it up and shoots.
Mm-hmm. And he shoots it. You get this really great shot, even though it doesn't make much sense, where it looks like it shoots a rocket or something, but this big blue rocket-looking thing hits the troll, it turns to stone, and then it starts collapsing.
Yeah.
And Hans is fine. Like, there's this big heroic sacrifice, he's fine.
Walks
Yeah,
off
I
into
was
the
expecting-
sunset like the heroes of old.
No, he doesn't even walk off the sunset, he's walking back. Like, he's just like, oh, I honestly thought that he thought he was going to die, and then he does it, and he's like, oh, okay. So he starts walking back to him.
No, he didn't. He walks away.
he walks opposite
He
way.
walks towards him.
Like he
No,
starts
no.
just going away,
Yeah.
like the thing slung over his shoulder, like fucking Clint Eastwood.
Maybe I got it wrong. And so they start walking back to the town at this point.
Yeah, they get on the road and they're all like, "We got the
That's-
footage, we got the tapes."
And when he told him to like go to the highway, like get out of here, save your. No, I know, but what I'm saying is
He's reiterating
Feral
it, Jesse.
Gosh.
I kid. I'm sorry, Rod. Take me back.
But then we find out that the government or this,
Yeah, we see
this-
like black vans driving
Yeah.
down. And it's like Sydney said, the actual scary people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at first they try to wave him down at first.
Well, the seismologist guy waves them down at first, and then like the two of them who are like in this from the start, they're like, "Oh shit!" and they book it.
Yeah, I think they actually recognize two of them as the ones Finn
Uh-huh.
was talking to.
because they're trying to confiscate the videos.
Yep, they're just like run, and like the camera woman gets left behind, like right at the start.
The camera,
and then,
she gets caught, right?
right, and then
then-
and
So she
then
doesn't know what's
Boom
going
Mike
on.
Lady gets
boom,
caught.
Mike Lady, she falls, and it's left to main
Thomas.
dude.
Main
to,
dude. He manages to get to a
Yeah,
road.
Thomas.
There's a bunch of trucks driving by,
and you hear a honking of the horn as it's like driving towards him. I think it's implying that he gets run over.
maybe.
Yeah. Well, it just and of course, we see the camera fall to the ground.
No, it actually
It
it
does-
says
it's-
he's driving, and it just cuts.
Straight cut. to
Oh,
black.
I thought. Oh,
It says the footage ends here.
Oh, okay.
And then
Is
it's
it like he just threw the camera?
No, it literally
it
is
literally
just,
just
like,
cuts.
cut.
There's like
I
no.
see. I must have missed that again. Okay, so and then of course the very end it tells
Where
us
it's
that,
like the kids vanished.
yeah they've
without
never
a
been
trace.
seen
If
from
If you
again.
have any knowledge,
If you have any
please
information,
us.
contact them.
The
Also,
whole
it's
paranormal
worth
activity bit.
Also, it's worth mentioning, we did kind of gloss over it, but it is mentioned at the beginning through text that these tapes just showed up in a brown envelope at the documentary board's office, and they spliced it together the best they could.
It was like over 200 something hours, and they kind of cut it down to whatever we just saw.
A movie link.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
perfect
so
movie length.
It reminds me of Texas Chainsaw, like how it opens saying, "What you're about to see
Yeah.
is true."
Oh.
It did definitely have that old
We need
feel to it.
We need to do that one day.
Eventually,
Yeah, we do.
yeah.
But then it says that what was he, some like official?
I think it was actually the prime minister.
Yeah, he's like actually but some candid footage shows
yeah, it's
that
the
like
prime minister.
he accidentally slips and reveals the existence of trolls, and it shows this like actual news footage of this dude going, "We have trolls," and then it shows Finn next to him going like, "Oh my god!"
they
I was
are
like-
actually asking the question about the power lines.
Right.
It's like,
But
do we
even-
really need to build the power lines out there?
But
With
he's like, the
taxpayer
truth of it
money?
is, we have trolls.
We have trolls, and but I like the way he says it because it's obviously the way he says it is a joke.
Uh-huh.
But then they edit in
See,
Finn
he-
sitting next to him.
And he admits it, but it also said that the press fails
get
to
it.
take the notice. You know,
And the actual story is like there's a little thing called like Troll Island off to the thing, and that's what he was referencing.
Yeah.
But the way they edited it,
Well,
makes
and
it
then
look
they
like,
Photoshop or they edit in Finn,
Finn. And he's
because it's worth mentioning because he doesn't like straight up say we have trolls in a super dramatic way. It's almost like he kind of giggles a little bit, he's like, yeah, we have trolls.
so
and then he like
Yeah.
immediately goes on. He doesn't.
and
seem to
then
be-
and he's talking, and then Finn's sitting next to him. He just turns his head, and looks at him like, "What the fuck did you just do?"
and I feel,
us all.
and this is just my theory, but I feel like Han was the one who submitted those tapes because he wanted it recorded. He
wonder how
wanted
he
this
got
out.
Well,
Because-
my theory is that it was either Hans or it could have even been the veterinarian. But I'm
because
pretty
we're
sure,
assuming they straight up killed the three.
yeah, or they either killed the three or they're just prison forever,
That's
like
awful.
secure. Yeah,
They're just nowhere to be.
dark
I
and
do
government.
think-
Jimmy Hoffa them.
I
Yeah.
do think it's implying that Thomas got like killed because he ran out into the road because he was like so frantically trying
And
to
he
get away.
can die anyway. He had rabies.
Yeah, and
Oh.
rabies is
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Rabies
Yeah,
is
that's how it works.
Well, no,
Well,
rabies is one of those
honestly,
things that
there's-
once symptoms
What-
start showing.
Yeah, you would want to die.
I thought you. Could,
It's a
I thought we had a
painful
cure
death.
now.
Well, you do have a cure,
Yeah,
but it's
you gotta
one of
get
those
it
cures
early.
that's not guaranteed to work,
And
especially once
it's
symptoms
like
show
it's like
up.
it's
Do
like
you think
100
that-
shots in your stomach.
Do you
Yeah.
think the semi gets rabies
Probably.
and it turns
But
into
anyway.
maximum overdrive?
Thanks, Liam.
But no, because in all honesty, because like you get bit by something and then you immediately get shots for rabies. It's like tetanus. Like you get immunized for
Yeah.
tetanus when something once you get step on a nail or whatever. But once symptoms show up, then things get a little more intense.
Oh.
And technically, he didn't care for his health because even when Hans was dressing his wound with the duct tape, he said maybe a tetanus shot. You think that might be on the top of his list of
He
doing
didn't
things.
care because when he finds out he gets rabies, Hans is all like, "The troll is coming." He's like, "I don't give a damn. I need to get to the hospital."
He gets to the hospital. Yeah, that's pretty good. But so this is when you get to like speculation territory. But I think Hans
Yeah.
is the one who released the tapes.
I think so too.
I think Hans got reprimanded and punished for what he did.
yeah, and we
But
won't
he
see it.
is the only person in
That
the
can do
entire
this.
country that can do this. So I bet he literally just got a slap on the wrist, like, don't do this again.
That
And
and
so he got the tapes.
I think he wanted it out there, like,
Yeah,
'cause
so
that's
he's-
why he had them talk, and he said, "Hey, it's all on me from the vet to everything." Like he wanted this to be out somehow.
And even at that point, I'm pretty sure he probably would have reprimanded, but at the same
Yeah.
time, he's the only one who knows how to deal with this stuff.
Yep.
Like it's kind of implied that the stuff that's going on and the fact that all of his gear is huddled together, that even most of the spooks, most of them don't even know like how to deal with this. It's literally just him figuring out for himself.
It's also this is like the worst it's ever been, though.
Yeah, that
like,
too.
Like this was a high peak of activity
Yeah.
for these things. Like usually it's probably like a run-in with a troll every 6 months or so.
Yeah. So I guess now is the time where we talk about our thoughts about this movie, and I'll go.
Do we give our final thoughts, or do we want to talk about like just things that like?
We can talk about just things if you
Okay.
got some more things to say.
I got some things.
Well,
I
then
watched.
this isn't our final thoughts. So
I
go
know.
ahead.
Well, these are just things. These are
Just
things.
things.
Yeah.
Ooh,
fine.
welcome to the part where
How
we
the
talk about
rabies
things.
suck.
The
Welcome to the
rabies is glorious.
Welcome to the Caddy Cast.
So one of the things I watched was a little detail about how the director like got the idea for this movie, and he apparently, as a child, had like a book of Norwegian fairy tales or like
course he did.
Scandinavian fairy tales, and he was like, I could use that for a monster movie, and that's what he did. And
You got to respect that.
yeah, and the rights for this movie have gone into an American hands for a long time, and that's why it didn't get released in theaters because
It's-
they wanted to make.
Oh, sorry. No,
They wanted to remake this in America, and it'd be awful.
It'd be awful.
No, stop remaking foreign films. Keep it.
I
Get
can't
the
hear,
rights back so
I
we
can't
can get
hear you
Trollhunter
over the
2.
sound of quarantine and the American remake of Martyrs.
God, I hate.
Oh God!
Don't ever bring up the American remake.
We
of
don't
Marvel.
use the M word here.
Oh jeez, what about the American remake of fucking shit? What the hell's that movie called? I can't even remember.
What is
Battle
it?
Royale.
Korean movie? Man gets locked in.
Grudge.
Old boy.
Old boy.
American
Oh.
remake. of
You're
Old
right,
Boy.
man. Remakes suck.
They do.
Why are we
Especially
so
the
bad at
foreign
making
ones.
movies?
And see, I like the movie Let the Right One In, and I still haven't seen the American version of it, but somebody told me it was
It's
pretty
still-
good.
The
It's-
American version's okay, but
Okay.
it misses a lot. of
But no, it's the same thing with Old Boy. The Old Boy remake is fine.
it is not. I disagree.
No, it's fine,
Oh.
but it's just the exact same movie. So
I
it's
will.
not-
I do have one that I feel the American version is better. Is Ring.
Yeah, I agree.
Ringu,
I agree. The Ring is like my one where I'm like,
Yeah,
the
that's the
video of the
worst.
original Ringu is like not remotely
Yeah.
creepy at all.
There's this
It is
game. There's this
now
movie. I can't
Grudge.
remember if it's called Funny Games or Dangerous Games.
It's funny,
Funny
games.
games.
Funny Games. The director liked the American remake because he wanted it to hit an American audience.
Well, that's
So,
one
like,
of those
that,
ones.
that was one of the main reasons.
Well,
he
that's
was
one of those
pleased
ones
with it.
where the country doesn't matter, whereas with Old Boy and Trollhunter, the country matters, and Let the Right Ones In, the country matters immensely.
Speaking of the country mattering, a thing I really liked about this movie is the way it presented everything
Oh,
in
yes.
like a realistic fashion, where it's like, if trolls existed, this is how we would deal with them, and this is what we would do. And I liked that concept so much that a part of me, even though I know this is probably a bad idea and they would drive it into the ground, would say, I would be interested about like making this a franchise where it's like, Banshee hunters, Oni hunters,
Wendigo.
like,
I would
going,
love
yeah,
to see
going
Yeah.
around with like documentary style
Different,
footage,
completely different characters,
Yeah.
completely different crews.
dealing with like the folkloric shit that like turns out to be real.
But it has to. But that's the problem with it being a franchise thing. Is like it can't be made in one country. You'd have to go to that country
Right.
and have that crew make it.
yes,
And like say
it would be an anthology sort of.
yeah,
thing.
kind of thing. I would love to see that. Even if
I-
it was like a mini series or something.
I would
like that.
adore that. And please, somebody, I don't know who.
Someone do it. I did have one complaint with this movie,
Yes.
and it's weird because it's like also my favorite thing about the movie is the whole scientifically explaining everything thing. I love how they explain why they turned to stone. I love how they explain all that stuff. The one thing I don't like, or like they gloss over, even though it's like one of the most important things in the movie, is what makes Christian blood different. Like
It's the one thing that's like
they gloss over
kind
it.
of supernatural.
Well, they don't even say we don't get it because it's not just that, but it's like how come they respond to when like Christian folk songs and hymns are playing? How come that makes them freak out? What about the mentioning of God makes them freak out?
like
even
the
though-
praying makes them instantly all like
yeah,
wake up.
because like as much as I love that scene and as much as cool it is, like they're completely safe until he starts praying. It makes no sense, and they don't even say anything like nobody knows, like we haven't figured that out yet. Like they could have said anything like, "Oh, Christian, like people who are extremely pious, like their hormone levels are different in their blood for whatever reason." That would have been fine.
Yeah.
Would have been bullshit, but it would have been fine. Of course, the problem with that is then you have to explain like, well, everyone who is religious has this happen to him, so the Muslim lady would be attacked. But
Well, we never really get into that situation
No.
because the Yatnar is so big that it's
It
like,
doesn't
it's
even
going
matter.
For, yeah, it's
Yeah.
going for everyone.
One problem I had, I didn't like the college students. Like
they were boring foils,
They
but I
were-
didn't
they
hate
were-
them.
like
I thought they did their job.
Yeah, they functioned well.
This isn't the sort of the movie that needs like layered, like characters with arcs.
Yeah, I understand that, but it's like you have the best part of the movie, which is Hans and the trolls
Uh-huh.
and like the TSS, just like all this stuff. Like, oh hey, this works because this, and like, oh this guy does this because trolls do that. Instead, we have like the college kids, just like a majority of the movie going, oh hey, so we're planning on waiting here till this creepy poacher guy goes
But-
back into
I
his
don't-
arc.
But it does
Like-
match the documentary style the movie's going for
It,
because like
really does.
because you watch it's not like David Attenborough goes through a character arc while he's narrating one of those
And
documentaries.
you need to have him like have a reason to explain like introducing new people to this world of trolls
Mm-hmm.
because you can't just be like. You can't just give him like a sidekick who is all like, "Well, this is how it works, Robin."
This is how or it's just like Hans hires a cameraman.
Right.
Yeah.
That
I think the college students added that kind of like touch of humanity to this guy who's like so his
Far
own thing.
beyond.
But I feel like they like kind of like at the beginning, no like discrediting the actors or anything, but they were just there. Like it was like I didn't care what their names were or anything. It was just that guy, this girl, and
The
that
the
other
boom
guy.
the boom lady and the host man, they were fine. It was the cameraman I didn't care at all about. And the minute you see his face, like more than 40 minutes into the movie, the minute you see his face, you automatically know he's gonna bite
I
it.
don't
Yeah.
think you can
Yeah,
ever
I
care
said
about
that
the
too.
cameraman
No,
in these
it's,
found footage
it's
movies.
that's the problem with being the
Yeah.
cameraman. You're not on camera.
Even T.J. Miller in Cloverfield.
hey, even
No,
Blair Witch, they
at
handed
least
the
he-
camera to everyone.
At least you had the T.J. Miller voice.
He did, and offering quips throughout the whole movie.
Is he from Kansas City? I heard T.J. Miller's from Kansas City. I could be wrong about that.
That would be cool.
That would be cool.
Yeah. My
so-
One of my favorite parts at the end of the movie, it plays I'm messing up the word already. Norwegian metal.
Oh, okay.
Klavertak Mjord, one of my favorite songs.
Yeah, it's a pretty rad song.
I like listen to this song.
What's the music?
What's some music?
What's
It's a song.
what's the music
You're
with
talking
you?
to a movie man.
No. it's like if you put
It's that
a
thing
bla-
that makes you feel something in a Zack Snyder movie.
yeah, it's the
Damn,
thing
shots
Zack
fired.
Snyder.
I'm not high fiving that.
You know the thing.
I'm
Wes
remembering
Anderson
Batman v
uses
Superman. That's
effectively.
definitely what that movie kind of relies on.
Number 300.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like your
Anyway.
though.
See, just to show you my taste, I still find a little gem in the Batman
So, yes.
or Superman.
No, so no,
Ron
just
is wrong. No, I'm kidding.
something we should get out of the way right
If you
now.
love it,
That
more
everyone
power
here
to you.
loves Marvel and everyone here hates DC.
Nope.
I like DC. a lot.
DC's my favorite. Sorry.
Oh yeah, something else for us to fight
But in
about.
terms of movies,
Anyway,
Wait,
back to Trollhunter.
I'll go back to the original Superman.
Back to Trollhunter.
Okay.
Back to
well,
Trollhunter.
the original Superman is awesome.
Jesse, shut up.
Okay, so,
Trolls. Superman fought one once.
okay, you guys were all talking about it. Like, of course, my only problem was the rabies thing.
Yes.
Like, that's the only problem, and I'll leave it at that.
I didn't really have any problems, by the way.
No, it's
Yeah.
actually one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, I felt like it in some way humanized the trolls.
Well, that's
And
the
then-
whole point of the movie,
But no,
though.
but that's what I don't want. Because if I did that, then I want to know why Christian blood, why this,
Okay.
why
Yeah, but-
that,
okay, that's fair.
why
They-
the
they get
light,
fine,
why
fine,
is
that
all
makes
this?
sense. They do explain
stuff?
the light. They do
Yeah,
explain
they
that.
do explain it, but why? You know what
It's
I'm
just
saying?
good. It's just
They
nature.
evolved that way.
Why do lions eat meat? Why do cobras spit poison? You know, it's that
Why
kind
does
of thing.
platypus exist?
Hey, it's because
Oh God.
Okay. So let's go and give our final thoughts and our reviews.
All right. I really like this movie. Like I said at the beginning, this is the only found footage movie I find myself rewatching. Like I'll watch one if someone recommends it to me, but I almost never feel like I need to go back to them. I hate all the Paranormal Activity movies.
Oh, shit.
I
So that means that's what we'll do next as a marathon.
oh fuck off. Quarantine is fine, I guess.
Wreck.
Wreck.
Oh, that's
Wreck
not-
quarantine.
I still haven't seen
I
Wreck.
still say that's record.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah,
But
it's
yeah,
record.
but it's such a.
I still haven't seen. I just haven't had a chance to even find that one yet.
Oh my
but-
God.
But we'll stop with foreign
Yeah.
films for a little while.
For a little while,
yeah,
we'll take a little break.
Get ourselves a little palate
Get
cleanser.
something we
Yeah.
something we don't have to read. Anyway,
Exactly.
I give
Alright,
this
there
I
we
give
go.
I
There's some
give this one a
viewers that-
solid 8. I really like this
8 out of
movie.
10, all right.
I want to be Hans.
He really does.
I
I really
Hans.
do. He's
I
really
re-
cool.
Hans is the coolest part
He
of the
is
movie.
I
That's
couldn't be Hans,
that's
though.
really all I have to say about it. Good movie. You should watch it.
So what I usually like to do is compare it to other movies in the genre, and I kind of count this as a found footage and a monster movie. In terms of found footage, it's definitely top 3.
Because, well, I mean, I don't mean to interrupt you before you get to your top 3, but I don't even think I could really compare this to a lot more, considering most found footage movies are. Look how hopeless we are.
That's why I wasn't comparing it to the troll subgenre, because
Oh
it has
my
it has a
God.
difficult fight in that category.
Yes.
But so yes, what was I saying?
top 3 found footage movies.
Yeah, it's definitely in my top 3 found footage movies. And in terms of monster movies, this is the sort of monster movie I love, where it's like we go into it, we don't have a moment where we sit down and pour through old books or have someone Skype explain the monster to us. We find it as we go.
That's the difference between a monster movie and other horror movies per se. Is usually since the monster is a physical thing, you can somehow explain
Right,
it.
we have to figure it out, and we have to overcome it, and in that regards, I would definitely say it's an awesome monster movie, and I didn't really have any complaints when we went around and having the round circle of complaints, so I would give this movie, I always say, give movies what they're striving for, and I agree with Sydney in an 8.
Nice 8.
Okay, it's my turn. Well, I really enjoyed, like, you know, all the beautiful scenes and, you know, nature in Norway. The trolls looked awesome. Hans is the coolest. Hans is like the
Oh,
coolest
he's so
part.
cool.
He is. Like, I would love to see more movies of Hans going, oh, so you got the werewolf problem.
you got
huh?"
He's not Scottish.
He's not Romanian either.
I'm
Yeah.
not changing my voice.
I love this running
Troll
joke.
stench does this to man. I must break you.
Oh my god.
Oh shit.
But I
Hans and
do
Franz.
I do have a problem with the college students, and they're like they're supposed to be the characters that carry this movie on, and
Hans is the character.
Yeah, he's the
Hans,
star.
well then why don't they just put more on Hans?
He
The whole
probably has
movie.
more screen time than they do.
Once he shows up, he's the only thing the camera focuses on.
Because the cameraman's there, then everyone's there.
I disagree with you.
Yeah.
Moving on.
And moving on.
Okay, I would actually give this a 7.
That's fine.
Yeah, but
No,
but
you have an opinion
But I
that's different than
recommend.
mine.
I recommend.
Why don't you
watching
like the
this-
things I like?
I recommend watching this. 7 out of 10, either way. Potato, potato.
Mhm.
Go see it. It's
Yeah.
very nice.
Okay, for me, I really enjoyed this movie, and this is why I love this podcast. Is I get to watch movies that normally go on my back burner, but it gets moved up because
That's why I like it. Most of these are movies I'd never watch.
Yeah, would never watch. It's something I definitely had on my watch list. I just never got around to it. Of course. So with me, I know that a lot of people don't feel the same way, but I feel I really love prequels to things, and a little part of me, would like to see a prequel to see like maybe the beginning of like where these things came from. But at the same time,
say where Hans got his
no. But I feel
You should have a cameo.
But then at the same time, I think it would fall flat on its face, like if we found out, like. Exactly.
And you know what? Sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but Jesse, that thing you were talking about, that did exist. It was a TV show on Animal Planet. It was this exact premise where it was like,
but a better like Hollywood version.
No, it was terrible. But I would recommend you check it out. I think it was straight up called Found Footage or Found Tapes or something like that. Check it out. It was around when I was like really young and it terrified me. It's trash.
I do love that
check
sort of
it out.
For a second, I thought you were talking about like Monster Planet.
That might have been it. I don't remember for sure. I'll
like
have to look it up later.
People and
It's like here, this lady
scenes.
survived, and they reenact, and it's like a found footage style thing.
I watched that a lot.
Yeah.
And I don't also mean to interrupt you, but I think like a medieval version of this would be kind of interesting to see how they fought these things when they didn't have
found
UV
footage
lights.
medieval movie.
Like when it was just swords and spears.
Also,
just someone.
anyway, let's get back to Ron. Sorry,
Okay.
he's giving me a look. So
No, that's fine.
I'm sorry.
I even lost my train of thought. Okay.
How much you want to see a prequel?
Yeah, sort of. Like that's what I'm saying is like I feel like it would be kind of cool to see a prequel, but at the same time, I think it might do damage.
Might
to
cheapen
this movie.
it.
Yeah, cheapen it. And like my problem, of course, is the Raby thing. I wanted these things to not be so relatable to like things that we have in everyday life.
In a way, I do get what you're saying. You wanted them to be more alien, a little bit more mysterious, but
yeah. And so like I feel that's the only thing that would bother my rating. So I would probably put it at a 7 with Liam, just because it's definitely a movie I'd probably rewatch again down the road. So
you're gonna say something.
That was the most tense hiccup I've seen.
Okay. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
All right. One thing I will say real quick, I want more movies like this.
I do too.
Well, what I mean specifically is like a horror-esque movie, even though like it's kind of like Ghostbusters in a way, where it's like
they're
fighting
collar people.
Well, yeah, not only that, but it's also the way they deal with the threat. Like it's with technology, it's with stuff they cobbled together. Like in Ghostbusters, they don't fight the ghost with ancient spell books or anything. It's with a bunch of nuclear reactors they have strapped to their back.
I love it.
And like I like the idea of it. It kind of goes with like kind of goes with the idea of like you watch a medieval horror movie, they're fighting it with their greatest technology, swords and spears and whatever. Like we do the same thing. Like that's why I always like in a horror movie when a guy just gets a gun or whatever. I just want to see more movies like that, you know.
I agree.
Yeah.
So how about would you guys be down for like Hans coming to America with a werewolf problem?
No,
Yeah.
it has to be someone
It has
else.
to be new people.
An
like,
American-
new
Like,
guys.
I want
American werewolf in America.
what I
Just
want is I want like the sequel to take place in like New Mexico or Arizona.
With the chupacabra.
No. It's the same premise. A bunch of shit kid documentary wannabes. They go out into the woods like, oh, we're gonna record because that's one thing I like about it.
And they stumble on
Well,
Han.
compare it to Blair Witch Project, where it's like we're gonna find the Blair Witch, and every other movie, most other movies like this, where it's like, we're gonna find the ghost monster or whatever.
Whereas this one, they're going to find the
Something
drug
completely
pen.
unrelated. Well, no, this one would be like, oh, we're gonna record a documentary about. It could even be another nature thing, like about the coyotes disappearing or whatever. And then, you know, they stumble upon the old Native American man. He's like, oh, I was hired by the government to help the skinwalker problem, or whatever. It could be
You
the
gotta be
exact...
careful about this, though.
Well, no, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like, it could be the exact same... It could be the exact same premise, just different people in a different culture.
I was thinking that the entire time I was watching this movie, I would be like, I just want this transplanted to like different areas around the world.
Yeah,
or the Canadian lumberjack who's hunting skinwalkers or Wendigos.
Oh my god.
I would definitely see that. I would be interesting. Like I would be interested in like, seeing a sequel or prequel. I don't care.
Or the
it's
old
like,
Mexican man, the Chupacabras.
where it's like multiple troll hunters. Where it's like, oh hey, I thought you were watching this area for him. It's like, oh yeah, you see the troll chewing the tire there, and then that one.
I'd say I'd want a version of this in Japan, but the problem with that is they have like 10,000
They have too
billion
many
monsters.
They have too many.
I don't know what they would fight. They would have to be like all-purpose all the time.
The
as
problem
soon as
with
they
Japan
find
is
them
they have
off-
so many that are like real legends that were first written like 5 years ago. But no, it's like, and even then, like the way you say, you got to be careful and worried about it.
Yeah.
Like if it's treated well, it could, like, this movie is straight up a celebration and like a love story.
Yeah, that's what it would have to be. It would have to be like you say, a love story of this monster and
if
this
this
folklore.
and of the culture surrounding it. Like if this was made in the 50s, yeah, sure, it'd be a horrifically racist thing.
Yes.
But you could do that today, You could have the kids who go to the reservation or whatever, or you could have the.
I still haven't seen a movie that does a Wendigo, right?
Yeah, I know, but that's what I mean. This could be because this movie
could be the one.
This movie did Trolls right. It did the most cartoony fairy tale Trolls ever, and it was great.
It did.
And like you could even Australia, you find the Aboriginal man who's like, all right, let me tell you about this
Maybe
shit."
they'll have mumps.
Mups. The hell's a
or
mup?
chicken pox.
Chicken pox.
Might as well give them every disease we have out here.
I think you're missing.
Oh, I've got lost.
rabies.
Oh,
So I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
What are
They
we-
all get
Okay.
beat by disease. I think with a lot of other monsters, though, you could justify why they're on just like kill crazy rampages.
Yeah. Yeah, but no, even the whole thing where it's like, well, it's based off. It's just it's just an animal. It's fine.
I like to see one in the ocean.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool too. Yeah, well,
That'd be too far.
no, but you know what would be a good one? You do the Kelpie from Ireland.
I would love that. Dang it, Cindy, you're
It'd be
stealing all
rad.
my points.
It'd be
Like
so rad.
You've taken everything I wanted
Wa-
to say
watch-
and like said it so much better than I
watch
could.
some-
Check out Monster Planet. You'll
I
like
will.
Monster Planet.
Watch someone listen to our podcast and take all our ideas.
That's
fine
why
with
I'm
that.
keeping the good ones.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
you don't say the really good stuff. I didn't think of any of this till Jesse said something. So right now would be the part of the podcast, I think, where we answer emails. And so if you decide to have any questions for us, any suggestions for something we should watch even, maybe, write in an email to mikeintheasylum@gmail.com. That's MICINTHEASY. I don't know how to
LUM?
LUM. That's how you spell asylum. @gmail.com. Thank you, sweetie.
And he was saying that to Liam.
Yes. Liam. And this
shucks.
normally would be the question section, but since we don't have any emails at the moment, I think we'll go ahead and get into our next pick. And I believe this week it is Liam deciding what to make us watch for next time.
Hello. So I was thinking we should definitely watch a very terrible movie.
Yes,
Like,
we've watched too many good movies on this
too
podcast.
many movies that bring smiles to my face when we talk about it.
You
So-
hated one of them.
Yeah, Cindy hated one of them.
Yeah, but it was still a well-made movie, unlike what Liam's about to suggest.
Yeah, unlike what I'm about to say. I am picking a 2009 movie called Muckman, and it was directed by Brett Piper and written by Brett Piper and Mark Polonia.
Is it starring Mark Piper? If it is, I'm just going to fuck this movie.
Ian Piper's in it.
Dude, this-
thank
Oh,
God.
it's
Hey.
his brother. It's even worse.
You know,
No.
the funny thing about this might actually be one movie I hate.
Yay!
Maybe.
Yeah, because
Because I do
because
love a
Lord-
lot.
I'm
Yeah,
looking
'cause-
forward to really dig into something here.
Oh, fuck.
Because we were talking about how Ron says like, how you guys try and show Ron stuff, and Ron's like, yeah, I overall
It's a good
liked
movie.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
see-
it's like
see,
we gotta
my-
show him one that he'll
Here's-
hate.
Okay, here's my thing. I have to say, I normally will hate a movie up until like the last 10 minutes, and then somehow
And
it
then
all comes together
he
at the
always-
end.
the hook
and then I'm
always
like,
gets him.
you know what? Now that whole hour of me hating this movie like is erased.
The main reason
Even Raw was that,
That
way for me.
that makes me hate
Until
a
I
movie
fa-
even more, though. It's like, why weren't you this good the whole time?
See, me, it's like
Oh,
the ending
I just
is.
want to talk about this movie right now.
You can't talk about it.
I can't.
Yeah,
Oh,
For
Oh.
me, most movies are case by case basis.
I don't
That's
know.
fine.
This movie might beat Swamp Thing, won't it?
What?
It
What's
looks like
wrong with Swamp Thing?
No, I'm just saying the Muckman looks like Swamp Thing, but with
He
mud.
looks like the worst version of Mark.